Chapter 101. Humans are such a waste. Do they need so many helpers to beat you? The tree spirit looked at the group of people and asked curiously. Jiang Tunan was silent for a moment and said implicitly, "Their goal is not to beat me, but to kill me here and make me your fertilizer." The little tree spirit was silent now. Jiang Tunan pulled out a vine from her palm again. Holding the whip xie, she gave her in her left hand. She was only one person, but she walked out with the posture of thousands of troops. Not only people came, but also many mutant animals. The leader wore a mask and could not see his facial features, but his eyes were extremely dark, which made Jiang Tunan feel that in his eyes, she was probably a corpse. But she didn't care. Since this group of people had chased here, they would not let her go easily. Jiang Tunan quietly controlled the mutant plants nearby, but was stopped by the leader. He seemed to be very familiar with his fighting style. The first thing he did was to let his men get rid of all the poisonous mutant plants. "You seem to be very familiar with my fighting style." Jiang Tunan looked at the big guy in the lead and felt that he looked familiar. The man didn't say anything, but just raised the gun in his right hand and shot at Jiang Tunan without hesitation. Jiang Tunan put out the vines as a shield, thinking about when she had seen such a person, but she couldn't remember, until the man resisted her whip and revealed a gun in his arms. There was a bright jade hanging on the handle of the gun. Jiang Tunan memory came back. "It's you, Qiu and I." Qiu Ni's hand paused slightly, still shooting at Jiang Tunan mercilessly. No wonder. Jiang Tunan recalled that she felt that he was out of place when she met him several times. She couldn't help but say, "Pretending to be honest doesn't really suit you. It's better to be like this." As Jiang Tunan spoke, she tried to stay away from Qiu and I with a whip, at least away from his range. She knew that if she fought with Qiu and I in close combat, she would not have an advantage. The only way was to keep moving, interfere with his aiming, and then jump out of his aiming range. As for the group of things behind him, Jiang Tunan didn't think they were a big threat. After all, they were a group of mutant animals, and she could control mutant plants to deal with them. "Your leader is a bit stingy. You are the only living person in such a large team?" Qiu and I finally opened his mouth. He looked at Jiang Tunan calmly and answered the question. "Cherish the time you can still speak." The barrel on his shoulder was already rapidly concentrating firepower, intending to fire at Jiang Tunan. This speed was nothing in Jiang Tunan's eyes. She was even faster. She directly plucked an unknown fruit from the side and stuffed it into the barrel faster than Qiu and I. Qiu and I didn't expect her to do this. His meticulous movements finally revealed a little flaw. He hurriedly let go of the barrel, but Jiang Tunan tightly wrapped it around his shoulders. "I just lost an arm, but you might be blown to pieces," Jiang Tunan explained calmly. The tree spirit, who had been silent all the time, suddenly spoke. "That piece of jade is what they took from me." Jiang Tunan's eyes fell on Qiu Ni's arms, and his expression was subtle. "He once tried to give this piece of jade to me, but I refused. If it were your human body, you should indeed refuse. This power can devour you and turn you into another person," the tree spirit said. "I didn't expect them to do such a thing." As the tree spirit spoke, it stretched out its branches to pull the jade. Qiu and I was tied up tightly, which was different from the power of the mutant plants. He couldn't find any hope of breaking free. He roared, but the branches on his body became tighter and tighter. It was not only the power of the vines, but also another power, which seemed to be the same as what he had felt before. The jade ring that was originally hidden in his arms was taken away. The tree spirit handed the thing to Jiang Tunan. "You should have this ability. I really don't know what you have done over the years to become so useless." Jiang Tunan didn't care much about its provocation. Looking at the jade ring in his hand, he remembered the time when he rejected Qiu and I not long ago. She looked at Qiu and I in confusion. "I remember you said that this was picked up from the stomach of a mutant animal." Qiu Ni's mouth was released at the right time. He struggled a few times, but found it was completely useless. So he replied, "I'm lying to you. This is something someone gave me. They said it can improve my ability, but I must find a chance to give it to you." Jiang Tunan thought, "But I didn't take it." "So you plan to take it for yourself?" "This is not quite accurate, because Qiu and I went through the open road," he reported to the person. But the person showed a meaningful smile and agreed. "Then help me do something, and this thing will be yours." Qiu and I has old people and young children, and he was originally sincerely grateful to Jiang Tunan. After he got this thing, he tried it himself and found that it could really improve his ability. so he also wanted to give it to Jiang Tunan sincerely. But both Jiang Tunan and Huang Xing were very cautious about this, and naturally would not accept a gift from a friend he met halfway. Knowing that the other party wanted to kill Jiang Tunan, Xiao and I decisively refused. Jiang Tunan saved his life. If he turned around and pointed the knife at Jiang Tunan, what would be the difference between him and a beast? But the power of this beast seemed to be impossible to tear off once it was touched. Xiao and I tried to throw away this strange jade several times, but found that it always appeared inexplicably in his home. The tree spirit shook its crown and denied, "I didn't do this. I gave out only a little bit of resentment. If used well, it can indeed improve the level of human beings, but it is definitely not so evil." Jiang Tunan thought, could it be that someone was following them, and then found an opportunity to throw it into their house? It's not impossible. The voice of the tree spirit suddenly appeared in his ears, and Jiang Tunan couldn't help but look back in surprise. This tree spirit turned into a human and looked quite realistic. He looked like an underage boy, but the expression on his face was full of bitterness and hatred. How could such a little guy who was ignorant of the world and had the energy that could improve human strength not be coveted by humans? Jiang Tunan moved his fingers, but still controlled his urge to pinch his face. If all this energy is used on a human, he can't bear it. Black matter floated on the fingertips of the tree spirit, which was exactly the same as the black layer on the outside when Jiang Tunan dug out the beads. At that time, Jiang Tunan thought that these things caused the mutation of the mutant planet. And now it seems to be true. Why do you want to wrap it up? Jiang Tunan asked curiously. You and I have the same origin, but we are not the same. The tree spirit stuffed the jade ring that had returned to normal to Jiang Tunan and explained. Resentment is not the same as the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Your spiritual energy is not enough to support so many creatures, but it will be coveted by others. Anyway, they are already so rotten, so they don't care if they get worse. Jiang Tunan tried to understand and guessed that this kind, but weird tree spirit was protecting her. These resentments can be easily dispelled by you, but they can also cause animals and plants to mutate. In terms of strength, they have become stronger, and those animals that absorb your spiritual energy have become smarter. It is true that they have become conscious, but when it comes to becoming smarter, Jiang Tunan thinks of the group of annoying people at home and dares not agree. She looked at the trap people and raccoons, knowing that the danger of being hunted down was temporarily resolved. But, do you know how to make these raccoons switch between people and raccoons? The tree spirit shook his head, glanced at the raccoons hanging on the tree, and said dissatisfiedly, I didn't let them use their resentment to harm people. They must have used this power to do other things. Now they have to bear the consequences. And do you really not remember? The tree spirit quickly swept his eyes over Jiang Tunan. You could do everything you wanted before, such as saving them and destroying them. Jiang Tunan said strangely, if I have this ability, wouldn't it be equivalent to the creator god? The tree spirit looked at her deeply. You have to ask yourself. After that, it turned and walked towards its main body. Perhaps because it is not very experienced in being a human, even its steps are a little staggering. A small figure stood under the tree, looking up at the three raccoons tied up. The tree spirit's hands turned into branches, pressing down on Lang Chichu's head, and began to chant in a low voice. Let's end it like this. Go back to where you came from. Wait! A voice sounded. Jiang Tunan looked back and found that it was Sancho. He didn't know how he turned into a human, just like the first time he saw him, wearing a mask, carrying a gun behind him, and running towards them. Lang Chichu can't die so easily. Sancho glanced at the two unconscious brothers and gasped. Lead him to us to torture. The tree spirit looked at him, then looked at Jiang Tunan, and sneered, foolish human. You have used my resentment, and you still want to return to your previous appearance? Sancho said sincerely, I don't plan to return to my previous appearance. But this person is no longer a human now. He used us as experiments, and countless experimental subjects are suffering. It's not a pity that he died. Another question is, how did he turn from a human into a raccoon? Someone obviously watched his body die. Jiang Tunan repeated his question for the second time. The tree spirit seemed a little guilty this time, and his eyes flickered. It should be that the resentment I gave them went wrong. This thing can connect different bodies, but it is absolutely impossible to achieve immortality. It's just that a person can disperse his soul into different bodies. The consequences of doing this are obvious. You will gradually lose your mind. None of the people noticed that the raccoon behind them quietly opened its eyes and looked at them through the branches quietly. When it heard eternal life, its furry ears moved slightly. It broke away from the branches very slightly, and the tree spirit was observing Sanchio's situation, hesitating on how to resolve his resentment. Picture. The moment it turned around, it saw the raccoon hanging on the tree. Lang Chichu had successfully escaped without knowing when. With a strange smile on his face, his body gradually began to smoke, and he ran towards them at a very fast speed. Jiang Tunan seemed to have sensed something, and when he turned around, he saw Lang Chichu running over with a strange look and movements, even emitting faint light spots, and secretly thought it was not good. In a flash, Jiang Tunan remembered the two bears in the same situation on the deserted planet, and quickly cast a sturdy cage with vines and put it on Lang Chichu. The heat gradually rose, and the vines were so hot that they wanted to dodge. But they were controlled by Jiang Tunan and looked around for a place to deal with Lang Chichu. There is a water source nearby. Let's go there. The tree spirit had already entered the jungle and turned back to look at Jiang Tunan. Lang Chichu began to laugh. I didn't plan to go back alive when I came here. If I had known that there was the origin of developing humans here, I would not have done this. His temperature was getting higher and higher. In addition to the vines that trapped him, all the mutant plants around him dried up the moment he passed by. It's useless. You are just weak and stupid humans. As for this little boy who appeared inexplicably, your power is just to provide us with motivation. The final result of the transformation still requires our own efforts. Lang Chichu said madly. Let you see the result of our transformation. The vines were constantly burned to dryness, broken and repaired, and the vine cage floating in the air kept dropping broken branches and leaves. Jiang Tunan felt that he could see more clearly. The mutant animals hiding elsewhere on this planet were restless and restless. Chu-Yi was looking for them not far away. They had already joined Wan Yishao to deal with the mutant animals brought by Lang Chichu. Xiao Inai was also making his last struggle, trying to speak, but his mouth was tightly sealed by the tree spirit. And Sancho, he seemed to be saying something to him, and seemed to want to snatch Lang Chichu away. Jiang Tunan did not agree, but took Lang Chichu to keep up with the pace of the tree spirit, holding Sancho's feet tightly with vines to prevent him from running over. But it couldn't last long. Jiang Tunan could feel that all his abilities were burning with the increasing temperature of Lang Chichu. Sancho was very anxious. He saw that Jiang Tunan was not in a good state, and he knew that Lang Chichu had been obsessed with studying how to maximize the power of the bomb in those years. He never thought that Lang Chichu's most proud work would be placed on him. According to Lang Chichu madness, he would probably drag everyone to death with him. Sancho had just started a new life and didn't want Lang Chichu to ruin it all, but he seemed to have no way to stop it. Jiang Tunan was very capable. He tried for a long time, but couldn't break free. He could only watch them go away. There were also brothers hanging on the tree. Sancho looked at Ichuan and Sidong, who had also turned into raccoons, resisting the vines and shooting the bullet at them without hesitation. Sancho also saw Xiao Inai struggling constantly, but he only took a glance. This stupid human was not worth his extra thought. He just wanted to wake up his brothers. Sidong woke up first and saw Sancho trapped in the same place with an expressionless face, with confusion in his eyes. Help me untie it quickly, or we will all die. Sancho pulled down the mask, revealing the identical face of the quadruplets. The only difference was that there was a very conspicuous scar on the lower half of Sancho's face from the base of the right ear to the lower jaw. Sidong released his supernatural power towards Sancho almost without thinking. The wind was blowing hard, but Sancho was as steady as a mountain. His clothes rustled, and he didn't move at all. Sidong's face gradually showed doubts, and Sancho's expression became furious. He began to curse. You damn Jiang Tunan. Do you think it's cool to be a hero? This is what Chu-Yi saw when he rushed over. Two raccoons were hung upside down on the tree. One was like a fruit that had not fallen, and the other was still in a coma. And the two people standing on the ground. One was wrapped tightly, and his figure could not be seen clearly. And the other was an acquaintance. But it was the first time he heard him curse. Hey, brother. Chu-Yi patted Sancho's shoulder, trying to get his attention. Sancho told Chu-Yi everything as if he had seen a savior, and added at the end, go help her quickly. There is a tree spirit with her, and they don't look like they can handle Lang Chichu. Chu-Yi looked at the tree in front of her thoughtfully, without saying anything, but walked towards the tree. Others may not know, but as an old goblin who has lived for 10,000 years, Chu-Yi knows everything about the past. She looked at the dark tree, which was the opposite of the hibiscus tree. with a subtle expression. I didn't expect you to hide here all these years. Chewie put her hands behind her back and waved at Sancho. It's not a big problem. She will definitely survive. Before she finished speaking, the ground under her feet shook violently, startling a group of mutant animals. The vines that trapped Sancho also suddenly dispersed. Obviously, the owner was no longer able to support this energy. Sancho showed an unbelievable expression, and saw Ichuan falling in the distance, and hurried to catch him without caring about much. In the cave separated by a mountain from here, this unusual vibration was also felt. Xie, who had turned into a sheep, looked at the place where the magnificent clouds floated in the sky with a pair of golden eyes, and said calmly, "Let's take you away from here first." Wan Yishao and Guanxi, who had lived with sheep, always felt uneasy, but they still obeyed Xie's command and walked out with the team members. Su Xinzi had an impression of this sheep. In the earliest video of Jiang Tunan, this sheep was always with her. Later, for some reason, this sheep disappeared. Su Xinzi thought that animals had a short lifespan and it was gone. But unexpectedly it appeared alone in front of them again. The group walked out silently. Wan Yishao looked at the sky that had turned into a pallet because of the previous earthquake and said with gritted teeth, "I'm going to pull the flag." Xie, who was walking in the front, looked back at her, his golden eyes serious. "What you have to do now is to leave this dangerous place." Wan Yishao stopped arguing with Xie. She would never leave here before finding Jiang Tunan. She glanced at Guanxi. Although he didn't say anything, they both saw each other's determination when they looked at each other. The exit of the competition venue was still not opened, and Xie was secretly muttering in his heart. He thought for a moment and decided to take everyone to set up camp here. "We will wait here," he arranged, in case of Xiao Guanxi. "Your current identity is not only a student, but also a soldier of the Legion. So you need to protect your classmates. Can you do it?" Both of them gritted their teeth and agreed. Watching Xie swagger away, they knew in their hearts that Xie's ability was stronger than theirs, and it was the best arrangement for him to find Jiang Tunan. But both of them were full of unwillingness in their eyes. Xie didn't know what happened, but he subconsciously ran to the deepest part. He could feel that Jiang Tunan's mental power was dissipating. Most likely, they had solved Long Qichu, but the price should be quite heavy. He ran to the bottom of the dark green giant tree and saw Chewie standing under the tree. Xie did not stop, but continued to run forward, running desperately following the breath left by Jiang Tunan. He passed through a jungle, waded through a turbulent stream, and never stopped, finally running to a vast ocean. On the coast, a young figure knelt on the ground, and heard the sound, but only moved his shoulders slightly. Xie slowed down his pace, but did not see the familiar figure. He began to adjust his breathing, trying to be in the best state when he walked over. "Where is Nan Nan?" Xie listened to the sound of the waves in his ears, and asked softly. The tree spirit looked at the endless sea in front of him and whispered, "Where should I go to find her?" As they came all the way, Jiang Tunan couldn't control Lang Qichu several times. He was always on the verge of explosion. With Jiang Tunan's existing ability, it was impossible to deal with Lang Qichu, whose body was completely replaced with high-tech explosives. Jiang Tunan finally understood why Lang Qichu had several cans tied behind him. Those cans were to maintain his vital signs, and to maintain the stability of the dangerous goods in his body. Now that the jar has been taken down, if she hadn't reacted in time, everyone would have been buried with him. The tree spirit has tried it, and there is very little resentment left in Lang Qichu's body. His transformed body can be said to be the result of human transformation, and there are few places where his power is used. Lang Qichu is very satisfied with the results of his transformation. He was crazy along the way, and revealed many secrets. If he knew that I died like this, he would be very pleased. This is my most satisfactory work. Jiang Tunan, you must have never thought that I was able to escape successfully last time. And I have to thank you. You used to be my most satisfactory work. And I also wanted to see how far you can go. It's better than I thought. It's a pity that you are different from Lang Qizhen. Be my right-hand man. Wouldn't it be good for us to rule the galaxy together? What kind of thinking does a tool need? I shouldn't have given you a chance to escape. From Lang Qichu's crazy words, Jiang Tunan gradually guessed the truth of the matter. There were actually clues that she was an experimental subject. Whether it was blood tests or her strange plant-related abilities, they were different from ordinary people. Thinking this way, it seems that you can understand why she was hunted down wherever she went. Because she was the undercover. After Lang Chichu went crazy, the amount of information he revealed was extraordinary. All the things that could not be explained before were like beads scattered on the ground. And he personally strung them together with a thread. Those animals used in the experiments were captured by them everywhere. And the same was true for the children used in the experiments. They were all abandoned babies and orphans they selected from different planets. Later, they found that it would be more efficient to run an orphanage. So they began to open orphanages on different planets. Jiang Tunnen was also one of the children they selected. Fortunately, Jiang Tunnen quickly escaped their control and found a place to stay. As one of the earliest experimental subjects, Jiang Tunnen was very satisfied with her. After discussing with the crazy experimenter Lao Chen, they decided to let her go because of her escape. They also took the opportunity to observe whether the experimental subjects could integrate into human society after being transformed. Jiang Tunnen integrated perfectly, even under their control. She even forgot the painful memories and grew up like an ordinary orphan. She didn't awaken her superpowers until she was 16 years old. At first, all the experimenters were disappointed when they saw that she awakened useless plant-related superpowers. Before they had time to curse, they found that Jiang Tunnen was going to apply for a job on the desert planet. Even if her superpowers were not good, it would be good if she could sneak into the desert planet to be an undercover for them. But they didn't expect that this was the beginning of things getting out of control. Because of the excessive freedom they gave, Lang Chichu industry that he had worked hard to run for many years was gone. And even he himself was ruined. So everyone unanimously decided to get rid of Jiang Tunnen. As for the nutrients of those plant research institutes, they were secretly supplied by them. However, Lang Chichu refused to say whether there were any of their people in the top management of the Botanical Research Institute. Jiang Tunnen didn't care and asked curiously, "Are the quadruplets human or animals?" Lang Chichu's furry face showed an angry expression. His hands were empty, but he clenched them into fists. "I raised those 4 traitors with great effort and gave them unparalleled abilities. But in the end, this is the result. They are just a group of beasts. They are really a dog that can never be tamed. Raccoons are the most cunning and like to collect garbage." Now it seems that this is true. Jiang Tunnen understood that human quadruplets should not be easy to find. Sure enough, they used other methods to turn animals into humans. No wonder Urxia and Sancho prefer to be raccoons. The reason is that they are raccoons. As for the resentment given by the tree spirit, Lang Chichu obviously didn't know that thing was the core force for their successful transformation. In other words, the people who contacted Qiu Ni and Lang Chichu were not the same group of people. The tree spirit looked at the raccoon in front of him and lowered his eyelashes. "I wanted to help humans, but I didn't expect this result. This matter can't be blamed entirely on him. As a tree spirit that can't leave its body for many years, he still knows too little about humans. However, there is little chance to remedy the serious consequences. And Jiang Tunnen can't say forgiveness for the victims." Seeing Lang Chichu's body getting hotter and hotter, Jiang Tunnen pondered for a moment and decided to throw him into the sea not far away. The vine cage slowly sank, and Jiang Tunnen looked at Lang Chichu struggling hard, and she couldn't tell what she felt in her heart. Did she personally avenge the 16-year-old Jiang Tunnen? Lang Chichu's sharp claws tried to cut the vines, and the pain was transmitted to Jiang Tunnen. She didn't retreat at all and continued to sink the vine cage. "You forced me to do this. You forced me," Lang Chichu wailed. And a layer of twisted heat floated on the whole raccoon. He looked at Jiang Tunnen standing on the shore, and suddenly moved. The speed of the vine cage's repair finally couldn't keep up with the speed of being burned. Lang Chichu's body temperature was too high. When his claws touched a place, a small hole was burned in the vine cage. Jiang Tunnen gritted his teeth and insisted. But it was not effective. She could only walk into the water alone. "Don't go." The tree spirit held her hand and said sincerely, "It was obviously my doing. How can I let you bear the consequences?" But they all knew that the tree spirit's ability and everything Lang Chichu had now were of the same origin. And the tree spirit had no effect at all. Without time to explain, Jiang Tunnen shook him off and fixed the tree spirit with vines. Jiang Tunnen ran towards Lang Chichu without hesitation. "Let's try it. If you die, I won't die either," Jiang Tunnen said calmly. She didn't know why, but she had this premonition. For her, losing this body seemed to be leaving behind a burden, not welcoming death. So Jiang Tunnen went without hesitation, not only for the humans and animals tortured by their experiments, but also for herself. For the 16-year-old Jiang Tunnen, And for herself now. The energy in Lang Chichu body was really abundant. Jiang Tunan only had time to block the nearest tree spirit. And the explosions in other places were all scattered. The scalding heat enveloped Jiang Tunan. And she suddenly thought, you haven't apologized to everyone yet. And you died like this. Which is a bargain for you. At this point, Jiang Tunan had no time to control the process of Lang Chichu death. She watched the raccoon scattered in the air. And it was obviously in pain. Which was completely different from the calm appearance when it welcomed death last time. Jiang Tunan breathed a sigh of relief. This time it should be really dead. And then she fell into a coma. When Xieshi arrived, the explosion was over and everything was calm. There was nothing left on the water except the rippling waves. As far as he could see, there was a thin figure sitting on the shore, who did not look like an adult. When he got a little closer, Xieshi found a clue. Where is Nan Nan? Xieshi asked. The tree spirit looked at him. His eyes could not hide his surprise. You are still alive? Xieshi said strangely. Although we don't live as long as you, we are still divine beasts after reincarnation. Is it hard to understand? The tree spirit was silent for a moment. Then why did she become an ordinary human? The body is just a container. Why bother about what the container looks like? Xieshi replied. It may be a good thing for her to lose her human body. Anyway, you will always be with her. Right? The tree spirit looked at the calm coastline and asked. Xieshi nodded modestly. It was because of her that I existed. No matter what happens, I will always wait for her to come back. It was also because of Jiang Tunan's arrival that Xieshi had the opportunity to become a Xieshi. And he recalled everything. Whether it was the strange bloodline of the Du family, or the bond between him and Jiang Tunan that had long been buried in time. So Xieshi was not worried about Jiang Tunan's departure at all. Because her body had recovered and the reunion was imminent. I just don't know if she will flash to the deserted planet or here. Xieshi muttered. And also sat down on the river bank, intending to wait and see from which direction Jiang Tunan would come back. On the deserted planet, a group of small animals fell into a rare anxious scene. Professor Zhao also had a tense face, constantly walking around in the small garden, looking at the communication from time to time, waiting for good news to come. So what did they go to do? Why didn't they take us? Leopard asked anxiously. It doesn't matter what you do. At least tell us. Cici agreed. Erxiong, who was sitting on the side, was dozing off when he suddenly felt a force in his body that seemed to be slowly leaving him. He suddenly widened his eyes, stretched out his two furry paws, and tried to summon fire, but failed. Is the energy unstable again? The little bear came over and looked at his brother's hand. Erxia and Sancho were not there, and Erxiong didn't know the situation, so he could only shake his head at the little bear. Xinjin sat next to him. Her little nose swept over Erxia's head, and asked in confusion, I see that many animals hate themselves after being transformed. Why do you seem different? Erxiong shook his head. I used to hate it too. But later I found that this ability can bring happiness and convenience to everyone. So I don't hate it anymore. Once upon a time, Erxiong also felt that he was out of tune with the animals on the deserted planet because he could spit fire. Until later he became everyone's grill rack. He was even a little grateful for his ability, being able to easily help small animals solve their troubles. Isn't this the reason why he left the deserted planet in the first place? Is there something wrong with the weather today? Fu Fu lay listlessly on the Jiji Luo shelf, not caring about the vines that hit him, and asked weakly, I feel a little confused. Why are you all in a bad mood? Xushi's husband appeared, with a pile of plates on his head and a thermos on his back. I get the recipe left by Nan Nan to make tea for you. Does any animal want to drink it? It is still in the dilemma of having a home, but not being able to return. Cici's attitude is very firm. The two rabbits have different views, and there is no need to continue their relationship. As for the little rabbits, they are accompanied by their brothers and sisters on the deserted planet. They have no feelings for this suddenly appearing father, and are determined to stand on the same front with their mother. So Cici's husband decided to save the country in a roundabout way, and start by pleasing every animal on the deserted planet. Bao Bao rolled on the ground, swung his tail, and thanked his husband in a sickly manner. He was about to take a sip when he felt an unusual vibration. What's going on? Is there an earthquake on the deserted planet? It's impossible. Where does the earthquake come from? Can there be an earthquake in a place as small as a sesame seed or mung bean? No. No. It's the smell of animals. Fu Fu and Zizi got up instantly. It was the first time for everyone to see ZZ so active. He even gave up the bamboo in his hand and turned around to run to the deserted planet under construction. Fu was not willing to lag behind and ran towards the deserted planet. Everyone looked at each other, but still followed the pace of the two and ran outside without hesitation. Chapter 102. Everything on the deserted planet is under construction, and the green has been restored wherever you look. Without Jiang Tunnen, many saplings cannot grow up instantly. But Professor Zhao has done his best to make these saplings look lively and strong. Soon, the animals following Fu and ZZ found something wrong. There are so many animal smells. No wonder they are running so fast. Is that the grandfather rescued by Nan and the others? Wow! That's a leopard. It doesn't look like me. Silly. He's a leopard and you're a snow leopard. How can you be the same? The closer they walked, the more surprised they were. The hibiscus tree became golden, and the leaves were green and dripping, rustling gently with the wind. Under the tree, a group of adult animals of all sizes surrounded the tree in the middle. The thing they surrounded was like a colorful cocoon, reflecting dazzling light in the sun. The cub had already squeezed into the arms of a large panda, and only then did everyone realize how petite the cub was. As for Fu, he also rubbed against the white tiger, quietly waiting for the huge cocoon to change. What is this? Shouldn't it be a bug's? Bai Shui stood on Lang Chu's head, looking from a distance, and asked, as a small animal who had lived in the Zerg. Bai Shui knew more about the Zerg and had seen the cocoon of the Zerg mother, which was somewhat similar to this one, but not quite the same. Everyone looked at each other, wondering why Zerg things would appear on the barren planet. I know. They must be planning to build a branch on the barren planet, so that the bugs that come out can be eaten directly by us. Bao Bao guessed. There is also a possibility that they have encountered some danger and temporarily fostered the insects on our deserted planet. Several cubs discussed it until Fu's grandfather spoke. Children, don't you think the energy inside is very familiar? The cub was the first to approach, and found that Tata was already there, sitting quietly next to the cocoon. Seeing it, he asked in confusion, why did Nan become like this? Isn't she a biped? The cub stretched out his paw in surprise, and wanted to touch the colorful cocoon. Be careful. The energy of the insect mother is very strong, Bai Shui suddenly reminded. Mother worm? Tata looked at the huge cocoon in confusion. But I can feel that there is Nan inside? Bai Shui had already squeezed to the front row with Lang Chu, and got close to this strange cocoon. The more he observed, the more strange it became. Huh? Why is it that it is obviously a cocoon, but there is really Nan's breath inside? Is Nan actually a Zerg? ZZ's bare paw pressed against the cocoon wall, and a magical scene happened. The cocoon cracked a small gap, but everyone saw it. Bai Shui took a breath, and ZZ hurriedly said, I really didn't use any force. How could it break? Professor Zhao, who came late, also came forward, took off his glasses, and observed carefully. As a human, he did not have the keen perception of animals, but he chose to report the sudden appearance of the cocoon on the desolate planet and informed Du Liang immediately. Du Liang, who had been guarding outside the stadium, was very excited. He stood up from his position and said, I will go back soon. You should arrange the new animals. The cocoon should hatch by itself. Don't worry about it. After leaving a message to Xie, Du Liang quickly ran to the jump point and planned to teleport back to the deserted planet. When she arrived at the jump point, she saw the people of the 3rd Legion who should not be here. Du Suo, the murderer who attacked the stadium, is unknown. H001 star does not allow anyone to enter or leave. Please go back. Du Liang's heart skipped a beat. He looked up and found that the port was indeed under martial law and the entrance and exit gates were closed. Chui and Xie still looked strange. No one knew they were here for the time being. Du Liang's heart skipped a beat, and he said in a deep voice, but there is an urgent matter on the deserted planet that needs my attention. When will you let me go? At least we have to wait until we understand the situation of the stadium. You can see that the entrance to the stadium is not open now. If something happens, we can't bear it. He made it difficult. Du Liang weighed the pros and cons for a moment, and did not forcefully ask to leave, but instead focused his eyes on the starship behind them. Who is on it? Leader? I want to meet with you. The people of the 3rd Legion followed her gaze, and said seriously, the starship behind is empty. The person in charge of this operation is me. Mendez. I don't know when such a young leader came to the 3rd Legion. Du Liang stared at him and smiled. It's just that the Third Legion has been in turmoil recently, and everyone knows it. I am not talented, but I just caught the eyes of the leaders, Mendez said in a serious tone. Du Liang looked at him again, turned around and left the jump point, and happened to meet Siesu. I heard that you left, but I received news from somewhere else that you can't leave for the time being, so I came to pick you up, Siesu explained. Du Liang nodded and asked in confusion, shouldn't you be with Tung Nan now, and be responsible for protecting his safety? How can you leave your post without permission? This place is not far from the stadium. I came to pick you up after I confirmed the security around. Siesu looked around and lowered his voice. I felt something was wrong when the Third Legion came. Du Liang thought for a moment and asked, Siesu, you have been with Xie Ji for more than 20 years. Right? 26 years. Siesu nodded with a smile on his face. So I am very grateful to the generals. And I must protect your safety. Du Liang nodded casually. His eyes seemed to be inadvertent, sweeping across the empty streets around him. Let's go back quickly. I don't know when Xie Ji will come out. Xie Ji, who was still in the stadium at this time, had already felt something was wrong. If Jiang Tunan came out from here, it shouldn't take too long. He sat in silence with the tree spirit, watching the broken vines floating on the lake. She should have returned to her original form. The tree spirit suddenly asked, so you have been guarding her original form all these years? I didn't guard her intentionally, because she has been in a deep sleep all these years. Xiaji looked at the water, his golden eyes calm. And she doesn't need anyone to guard her. She will wake up naturally when the time comes. That's great. The tree spirit sighed. Can I go out with you? This matter is more or less my responsibility. Xiaji was silent for a moment, and said, you mean well, but you can't expose your abilities even if you go out. If you are curious about human society, you can live like a human. If not, then you'd better not go out. This tree spirit is really simple, and he can be easily deceived. He has strong abilities, and he is like a piece of fat meat in human society. The two fell into silence again, and Xiaji got up first, intending to continue to find the exit with them. Chui sat on the branches of the tree spirit's original form, and her beautiful colorful wings made the huge tree a beautiful background board for her beauty. She looked down at the two people, and with a slight movement of her fingers, 2 raccoons and 2 humans fell down instantly. The 3 raccoon brothers were placed in a row, and Chiu Ni's body was covered with blood marks from Chu Yi's use of something. What a stupid human. Didn't you look at your own weight before harming Nan Nan? Her face had complex patterns unique to the Zerg, and she was probably angry. The patterns were bright and dazzling, and her expression eased a little when her eyes fell on the tree spirit. I know you, little tree. Chui flew down from the tree, and her huge wings disappeared in an instant, leaving only a pair of elf ears. Her smart eyes lingered on the tree spirit, and I don't know what she was thinking. The last time I saw you, you were still a sapling, but I didn't expect you to have grown so big now. Chui looked at the tree spirit, and one sentence decided whether he would stay or go. I haven't found the things of the Zerg yet. Since you have given power to humans, you should help me find things. The tree spirit still remembered Chui, the little butterfly that fell on Jiang Tunan's shoulder like a quiet decoration. He did not reject Chuyi's proposal. The decades-long experiment started because of his momentary thought, and the impact on animals was particularly great. If Jiang Tunan and the others had not accidentally exposed this secret, the entire human society might have been in trouble. The tree spirit was silent for a moment and asked, then can I still see Nan Nan? Chui was about to answer him, but suddenly frowned and looked into the distance. Xieji took a look, and the direction she was looking at was clearly the location of the desolate planet. She woke up, but returned to her original body. We have to stabilize this side now, Chui said quickly. I don't know how many years ago, human society was in trouble, and the spirits on Fushi Mountain decided to come out to help because they received the kindness of the people at the foot of the mountain. Jiang Tunan's original body is the Fusong tree that grew together with Fushi Mountain, so it is natural that she cannot refuse, because of her spiritual energy. The various races that came here also turned into human forms to help. No one expected that it would be the last time they met. The Xieji and Jinwu tribes also perished, and the remaining cubs struggled to grow up. And in order to integrate into human society, they sealed their own bloodline. But I don't know what went wrong. Xieji thrived in human society, but Jinwu was never heard from again. Chu-yi was the only one who stayed on the mountain to take care of the Fusong tree. Because everyone knew that as long as the Fusong tree was still alive, they would definitely reunite one day. Chu-yi, who used to need everyone's protection, finally grew up. Even though she had experienced great changes and lost her memory and became an ordinary human. But he was also the only one who always stayed by Jiang Tunan's side. And he was also the most powerful one. Finally, I've waited for this day. Chu-yi sighed, with a faint smile on his face. The moment the stadium opened, Tung Nan rushed in with his men and bumped into Wan Yishao and the others. Where's Nan Nan? Both sides asked in unison. Wan Yishao felt that he was dizzy, and answered like a machine gun, we were originally together. But then we met Lang Qichu. In order to ensure the safety of others, we directly split into two groups. Now we don't know where she is. The crisis seemed to have been resolved. But there were many unrelated people around. Wan Yishao didn't dare to say too much, and only said, can I go with you to find her? Tung Nan didn't refuse. He was not very familiar with the stadium. After all, Wan Yishao had run a few laps in it, and knew the road conditions better than him. Guanqi also stayed. Su Xinzi knew that it was useless for them to stay here. She held Wan Yishao's hand and said solemnly, wait for your good news. There were mutant animals released by the organizing committee in the stadium. Tung Nan brought the rescuers in, and let Su Xinzi and the others leave. He decisively closed the entrance to the stadium again to prevent the mutant animals from going out and hurting people. It turned out that Jiang Tunan kept Tung Nan's small flame. If he wanted to find her, he only needed to rely on the small flame. You can't bring personal belongings to participate in the competition, so it is much more difficult to find her. Wan Yishao took the opportunity to say, Xie Ji and Chu-yi are here too. With them, Nan Nan should have no problem. Tung Nan nodded, glanced at the magnificent clouds in the sky, and said after a moment of hesitation, just go over there. Xie Ji still maintained the appearance of a sheep, with 2 humans and 2 raccoons behind him, and a little boy beside him. The moment the stadium door opened, he made a decision and took these trophies to find the people who came in together. The people who have the ability to open the gate of the competition venue must be masters like Tung Nan, and these people happened to be familiar with him. As soon as they entered the competition venue, the people brought in by Tung Nan scattered. Tung Nan, Wan Yishao, and Guanqi kept analyzing the route that Jiang Tunan might choose, and then found the big tree. This tree is so strange. It is about the same size as the Fusong tree on the wasteland planet. Didn't the 4th Army find the problem? Tung Nan asked curiously. Guanqi shook his head. If we hadn't entered the competition venue this time, we really wouldn't know there was such a big tree. In theory, this tree should be like the Fusong tree on the wasteland planet, and it can be seen from a long distance. But no one has noticed the existence of this tree. Tung Nan couldn't help but approach it and scraped a piece of bark, intending to take it back to the wasteland planet for Professor Zhao and others to study. A rustling sound was heard, and the 3 people unconsciously raised their vigilance and tightened their weapons. But I saw that like Moses parting the sea, the mutant plants made way for a small path, and a black one-horned lamb came out of it, with a rope on his body, looking like a hard-working sheep pulling a cart. Behind him, there was a teenage boy who was dressed simply, with porcelain white skin, and looked ignorant and innocent. Everyone, ? Didn't I say that you are here to save people? Where did this little boy come from? Don't tell me he is Jiang Tunan? Wan Yi's eyes widened slightly, and his eyes looked back and forth between the man and the sheep. Guanqi noticed the person behind Xie Ji at the first time. Isn't this on the H-37 star? Tung Nan also discovered this, and his face became extremely ugly. So where is Tunan? Xie Ji didn't say anything, but just put the 2 people and the 2 raccoons in front of them. Find someone to go to the sea to retrieve Lang Qichu's body. As for these few, we have to take them back for further interrogation. So where is Nan Nan? Guanqi couldn't help but ask. Missing, but most likely already returned to the desolate planet, Xie Ji said, seeing him so calm. Several people couldn't tell whether he was serious or just talking nonsense. They looked at each other, not knowing what to do next. Tung Nan's mind was turning over and over. He knew that Xie Ji was not a person who spoke without thinking. Finally, he thought about it and arranged, you go out first. I will stay here to find Lang Qichu's body. It seems that it is not allowed to enter and exit here at will. The director originally planned to return to the desolate planet, but was stopped. You need to help. Xie nodded, packed up the people and raccoons in his hands, and handed them to Guanqi. Take them to the 4th Legion. And be careful of the people in the 3rd Legion. Guanqi was still a little confused about why Xie said so. When he saw the people in the 3rd Legion at the entrance of the stadium, he understood everything instantly. But new doubts arose. This is clearly the 4th Legion's territory. How did the 3rd Legion come here to interfere? She and Wani exchanged glances. And Wani approached and said, "Isn't this Lao Fong? Why did you come all the way here to carry out the mission?" The man called Lao Fong by Wani Xiao looked around and said cautiously, "It is said that someone defected and chased all the way here. By the way, we received a notice from above to guard together and prohibit entry and exit." Wani Xiao patted Lao Fong on the shoulder. "Thank you for your hard work." Lao Fong, "I heard that a relative from above was airdropped. Thank you for your hard work." Lao Fong showed a tired smile. "It's not very hard. After all, we are in this business. We do whatever the superiors ask us to do." Wani Xiao stopped talking about it, fearing that saying too much would arouse suspicion. He saw Guanqi had already swaggered away with people and raccoons. So he said, "Then I won't bother you. When you rest, we will drink together." As a former member of the 3rd Legion, Wani Xiao's popularity is quite good. At first, everyone in the 3rd Legion thought she was a rich lady who came to gild herself. It was not until they went to the battlefield together that they realized that this lady was really capable. Moreover, Wani Xiao has a good personality. After being in the 3rd Legion for a long time, everyone understands her character and naturally becomes close to her. As for Wani Xiao tricking the 3rd Legion at the Legion conference before leaving, the ordinary soldiers of the 3rd Legion did not blame her, because after that, their welfare treatment has obviously improved a lot. The 3rd Legion is far away from the Emperor, and when Lang Qichu was still alive, they were almost like his private soldiers. If there was no Wani Xiao, they would definitely still be controlled by the aristocratic family. They are called members of the Legion, but they are different from other legions, and do work for private individuals. When everyone joined the Legion at the beginning, of course, they were to defend their country, not to be a private soldier of a noble family. Wani Xiao's action was praised by everyone, because she said what they wanted to say but dared not say. Even if Wani Xiao tricked Lang Qichu, more people praised her bravery. Wani Xiao left leisurely all the way, and many people in the 3rd Legion greeted her, and some even gave her snacks and medicine. Wani Xiao put everything into her bag without changing her expression, as if she was on a spring outing. It was not until she met the eyes of the new airborne leader of the 3rd Corps that her eyes changed slightly. "Miss Wan, long time no see." Mendez straightened his collar, and his smile was very official, without any flaws. But this person had a close relationship with Lu Song, and Lu Song was taken care of by them. Wani Xiao didn't believe that he hadn't found out some truth after so long. Wani Xiao secretly raised her vigilance, nodded slightly at him, and strode away without stopping at all. Mendez raised his eyebrows, looked at Wani Xiao back as he left, and asked the people around him, "Do I look scary? Why did she leave when she saw me?" He obviously didn't need an answer, and the smile on his face didn't change. His eyes left Wani Xiao back and moved to the inside of the stadium. He said, as if in admiration, "There are so many talented people in Huangxing. Du Suo is really good at managing his subordinates. When Marshal Xie comes, I must ask him for advice." After Du Liang came back with Xie Su, he had been sitting in the lounge of the stadium. Several commentators and invited experts sat together, discussing a few issues related to the stadium from time to time. Du Liang just listened and didn't join their conversation. Someone suddenly asked, "Du Suo, your Huangxing is really full of talents." Tung Kai was very popular when he participated in the college league. The children are capable, which is a good thing. Du Liang smiled slightly and didn't say much. Indeed, after all, there are only a few who dare to hire people as boldly as Du. Du Liang heard the thorn in this person's words, but he didn't bother with him. He just looked at the work permit on his chest and understood the reason. This person is from the Institute of Plants. To be more precise, he should be in the same period as Professor Zhao. Most likely, Professor Zhao offended someone, and now he is running to show off in front of him. Professor Zhao, current leader. Speaking of which, did Mr. Qi go directly back to Pingxing after we moved the venue? How can the Institute of Animals be separated from Mr. Qi? The people under him are not doing their jobs properly. They either run zoos or catch ancient creatures everywhere. Of course, Mr. Qi has to worry a lot. Du Liang was not angry at being so insinuated. Suddenly, a line was connected in his mind. She opened her eyes and looked at the man, and asked, "How do you know that Mr. Qi has gone back to work? Need I tell you? Didn't Mr. Qi take the opportunity to watch his granddaughter's game because he didn't have a vacation for a long time last time? I didn't see him this time. So he went back to work, didn't he?" Guanqi, who was standing at the door, changed his face instantly, and his raised hand froze in midair. As Mr. Qi's granddaughter, Guanqi naturally knew that he didn't go to work. It can even be said that their family didn't know Mr. Qi's whereabouts. Originally, he promised to come here to watch the game, but he hasn't shown up yet. Guanqi turned around and found Xie and said in a deep voice, "Contact the marshal. My grandpa is missing." Xie nodded and said meaningfully, "We received the news a long time ago and have sent people to look for him. Don't worry. There should be news soon." Never expected to wait for this answer. Guanqi had countless doubts in her mind. Why did they find out that Grandpa was missing before her? And generally speaking, doesn't it have to be confirmed by the family members before the missing can be confirmed? Xie obviously didn't intend to solve her doubts. Guanqi found her own communication and called her father, but got an ambiguous answer. Everything was weird. Guanqi had a bad premonition, but he didn't know where this premonition came from. They were a harmonious family. Although everyone was busy with work, they always had to take time to get together. Why did Grandpa disappear? After making sure that they had all left the stadium safely, Xie did not hesitate to follow Chu Yi's footsteps back to the deserted planet. The restrictions here can stop humans, but they can't stop them. The Du family should be the last existing bloodline of the divine beast. For some reason, Du Liang is more sensitive to the same kind, and thus met Chu Yi and learned many truths. Xie mother Du Chen looks normal, except that her abilities are stronger than those of ordinary humans. No one expected that the so-called divine beast reversion would appear in Xie. When Xie was a child, he often followed Du Liang outside. A big part of the reason was that they had not found a way to make Xie a stable human being at that time. He could not control the bloodline of the divine beast in his body, and would turn into a sheep from time to time. Unlike Du Chen and his wife, Du Liang often worked in the wild, and he was the most suitable person to take care of this eldest nephew. Fortunately, Du Liang knew Chu Yi and found a way to help Xie return to normal life. In order not to affect Xie's life, he did not even leave him with the memory of being a sheep. Xie also found clues in his mother's study by accident, because he was helping Jiang Tunan to find information recently, and wanted to restore the health of those children and animals. He figured out why he turned into a sheep and met Jiang Tunan. All this was arranged by Chu Yi. Since then, he seems to have learned how to turn into a sheep without a teacher. To be honest, being a sheep is indeed more comfortable than being a human. He can act coquettishly and roll around without any scruples, which is something he can never do as a human. It came quite quickly. Chu Yi sat on the top of the hibiscus tree, squinting at the black lamb and smiling. "Little ones, Xie is back too. Nan should wake up soon." She looked down at the restless animals below and guessed. Who do you think Nan wants to see the most when he wakes up? The heavy atmosphere was swept away, and a group of cubs began to argue, and it seemed that they were about to fight. The colorful cocoon suddenly cracked again, and warm white light poured out, and everyone suddenly fell silent. Before she had time to complain about the color matching of the colorful cocoon. The little man on his head slapped his head frantically. "Hurry up! Jiang Tunan is coming out." Xie. The colorful cocoon broke into pieces, and everyone's expectations were raised to the highest level. Staring at it intently, in the Zerg camp in the distance, Siwen and Wu Fang seemed to have sensed something, and they subconsciously looked towards the direction of the desolate planet. In many dilapidated planets, small heads popped out from the dark woods, and eyes of different colors also looked straight into the distance. Even many planets with seas can feel the vibrations in the ocean, and the waves are much larger than usual. Xie can hear his own heartbeat, as if it has been magnified countless times. There is also the rustling sound of the newly planted plants on the desolate planet, as if welcoming her home. A girl gradually emerged from the cocoon. She closed her eyes tightly. The branches and leaves of the hibiscus tree all gathered towards this place, swept across her cheeks, and lifted her hair. The moment the girl opened her eyes, all the animals howled in different ways. Professor Zhao and Professor Zhao, who came after hearing the news, saw this scene and widened their eyes in surprise. Her eyes were a little confused, and she didn't seem to understand where she was. Chewie quickly jumped down from the tree and hugged her in his arms. Welcome back. Nan Nan. Memories surged up like a tide. And Jiang Tunnen also remembered why she was afraid of butterfly wings. That was the last memory of being a hibiscus tree. She took Chewie down the mountain with her, in order to save her and the group of children. Chewie opened his huge wings to wrap them up, and then was wrapped by the rushing sea water. Jiang Tunnen's eyes swept across the animals in front of him, and he was still a little confused about what day it was. Yi? No. You are not Yi. I am. Chewie blinked and changed his face in an instant, not feeling at all how horrifying it was to be seen by humans. Professor Zhao and Professor Zhao, the only two ordinary humans present, were not frightened at all. Perhaps they had been on the deserted planet for a long time, and had seen all kinds of storms. Jiang Tunnen said strangely, "No wonder you are so nice to me. It turns out that you recognized me a long time ago?" When he first came to the deserted planet, Jiang Tunnen had dreamed of her ending on Earth, and his best friend went to her grave in person in the rain. Now the truth is out. No wonder he felt like he got along with Chewie when he saw her, because she was the little butterfly who had been with him for many years. You too. Now may not be the best time to reminisce about the past. Xieji has turned back into a human, with a teenage boy following him, trying to attract Jiang Tunnen's attention. Jiang Tunnen, whose brain was overloaded with information, was a little slow to react, and asked hesitantly, "Who is this? Your brother or?" "I told you. Don't look at strange things." Xieji helplessly stretched out his hand to Jiang Tunnen. "None of this matters. Can you really not recognize him?" Jiang Tunnen faced the hopeful eyes of the young man in front of her, and tried to ask Chewie for help. But unfortunately this person had no intention of helping at all, and was even watching the fun. The breath on his body was very familiar, and Jiang Tunnen guessed that this person should also be a kind person who helped her. The string of beads on her wrist was slightly hot, and Jiang Tunnen instantly remembered the black mist that wrapped the beads to prevent them from being coveted by humans. "You are the sapling," Jiang Tunnen confirmed, looking at the boy in front of her. She was relieved. "I haven't had the chance to go back to see you since then. Are you doing well now?" The tree spirit nodded and said shyly, "I'm sorry. I have caused you a lot of trouble over the years." After Jiang Tunnen regained his memory, his attitude towards the tree spirit was unexpectedly the opposite. She remembered that the tree spirit tried hard to protect the burial place of the soldiers. His ability was very weak at that time. It was because humans kept putting pressure on him that a simple sapling was forced into this state. "You can't be blamed entirely. We will solve it together later," Jiang Tunnen comforted. The power of Suizhu originally belonged to her. She used to mistakenly think that it was given to the main body, but in fact they are inseparable. Jiang Tunnen looked at the group of cubs who were eager to try and smiled. "I also want to thank Lang Chichu. If it weren't for his plan, I wouldn't be able to come back so soon. Suizhu is back, and with it come many fragmented memories. No one will guard against a bead, and those who want to use Suizhu are the same." Jiang Tunnen picked up Shushu and walked out quickly. "Director Du is in danger. I really didn't expect that Lang Chichu and his team's arrangement was so perfect. They wanted to drag someone down with them even if they died. Since she met Mendez on the train to the deserted planet, every step was in their plan. All the wrong links should be thanked for the help of everyone on the deserted planet. Old Chi. He has a problem," Jiang Tunnen said firmly. "This is not nonsense." Jiang Tunnen looked at several memories left by Suizhu, and saw the figure of Old Chi in them. Although he didn't know what role he played in this organization, at least he was not as harmless as he looked. Jiang Tunnen even suspected that the reason why their experimental progress was so fast was because of the support of Old Chi, the director of the Animal Research Institute, who was hiding in the dark. If so, so many animals suddenly appeared on the deserted planet. But the other party did not move. There must be something they didn't know. In other words, everything that happened on the deserted planet is likely under the control of the other party. Jiang Tunnen was about to leave, but was stopped by Xieji. "Don't worry. We have considered all you said. Even so, the most important thing now is your safety. I am no longer the person I was before. You don't need to spend all your energy to protect me." Jiang Tunnen smiled. "Now it's my turn to protect everyone." She stretched out her hand, and what followed was not vines, but a gust of wind. The wind was blowing hard on the desolate planet, and Professor Zhao walked back with a group of cubs, a little confused. He looked back at the two people standing there, Jiang Tun's clothes fluttered, and there was a smile on her face. It is difficult to describe this smile. Professor Zhao thought for a long time before finding a relatively accurate description. This smile makes her look not like the underage Jiang Tun in her teens, but like she should appear in the near future. Confident and full of power. Soft and forgiving. It seems to be more universal than the calm and powerful Du Liang. Jiang Tun is full of mysteries. For example, an underage girl knows more than Du Liang do. And why can a human hatch from a cocoon? But who on the deserted planet doesn't have secrets? As long as they move towards a goal together, this secret becomes harmless. Professor Zhao came to his senses and couldn't help but say, Tunin, welcome back. It doesn't matter whether she can hear it or not. At least he must deliver his thoughts as a senior. Professor Zhao didn't expect that Jiang Tunin not only heard it, but also replied with a smile. Thank you, Professor Zhao, for your care and help all the time. It's been a long time since I saw such a polite child. And Professor Zhao was a little uncomfortable. He patted Professor Zhao on the shoulder, as if to cover up. Learn more from the children how to talk to seniors. The two old children took the opportunity to run away, and took a bunch of oil bottles with them. Has it really recovered? Xieji couldn't help but look at Jiang Tunin. Even though he knew that she was the source of all the power, he couldn't help but take care of her from the perspective of an adult. Absolutely no problem. Jiang Tunin stretched out her hands to indicate. Or let Chui prove it for me. Chui snorted and laughed, and mocked unceremoniously. You are worthy of it. Xieji, you used to be like a puppy around a meat bone, but now you haven't made any progress at all. Xieji was not ashamed of this, but proud of it, because from a mental point of view, Nanan is still a child. It's time to show you how powerful children are. Jiang Tunin tilted her head slightly, and showed a playful smile. Chapter 103. Being brought to the room inexplicably. Du Liang couldn't help but sigh when she saw Old Qi. I guessed it was you, but I didn't expect it to be true. Old Qi motioned her to sit down, and said in a gentle tone, yes. We have worked together for more than 30 years, and I didn't expect there would be such a day. When did you guess it? Old Qi thought carefully and guessed. After bringing Tu Nan to Pingxing? Or earlier? Du Liang looked at the well-maintained old man in front of him and shook his head gently. Since our meeting? You said that you didn't see the Fusang tree when you went to Huangxing. Old Qi showed a little surprise on his face. I didn't expect it so early. It seems that I kept you this time, and you didn't leave in vain. The two of them talked like playing a riddle. But Old Qi didn't know that Du Liang had been prepared. Now everyone on the Star Network watched this inexplicable live broadcast, and only knew that these two were bigwigs from the Animal Research Institute, and didn't know what they were discussing. I always feel that the atmosphere between them is weird. Is it because of the disagreement on Huangxing? Does anyone know what happened? It feels bad to be unable to eat the melon even when it is in your mouth. Netizens don't understand what happened, but Guanqi does. Ever since she learned that her grandfather was missing, Guanqi's eyelids have been twitching, as if she had a premonition that something uncontrollable was going to happen. She guessed the worst, wondering if her grandfather had met with misfortune. But she didn't expect that he wanted others to meet with misfortune. When she heard them mention Jiang Tunin going to Pingxing, Guanqi had already guessed it. When they encountered the attack on Pingxing, it was not arranged by Long Qichu, but it was arranged by her own grandfather to put the blame on Long Qichu. Guanqi felt that her three views were refreshed. She didn't expect that her grandfather, who had always taught her to be upright, had always been a person who violated that statement. She clenched her fists and began to worry about Du Liang's safety. Her grandfather had always been cruel and ruthless. She used to think that the tip of her grandfather's knife would only be aimed at bad people. But now she was not sure. Outside the arena, Guanqi didn't know whether he should contact his parents. And he didn't know what role his parents played in these things. Was it the same as his grandfather? Wan Yishao pushed the door open and saw Guanqi's ugly face. He could only pat her shoulder to comfort her. This kind of thing is no big deal. He is him. You are you. And everyone knows what kind of person you are. Wan Yishao felt this kind of shattered feeling when she learned that her cousin could turn from a human into a sheep. But compared with the matter of Mr. Qi, it was not a big deal. There are always all kinds of unexpected events in life. He just chose the path he thought was right. You have to choose the path you think is right, Wan Yishao said earnestly. At the same time, he felt a little strange. How did Mr. Qi, a sinister and cunning old man who had been undercover for many years, teach Guanqi to be so black and white? Guanqi looked at the two people who were still confronting each other in the live broadcast room. Mr. Qi seemed to have already determined the victory. He smiled kindly and answered questions for Du Liang. Your Tunin has been solved by Lang Qichu. Although they died together, Lang Qichu has made great contributions to mankind. I will clear his name in the future. You think that everything was done by Lang Qichu. But in fact, many of them were done by me. And then pushed to him. It's a pity that you didn't find out earlier. Do you think that the things of the Botanical Research Institute must be done by the people of the Botanical Research Institute? Old Qi said meaningfully. There is also a possibility that I help to advance their progress. It is said that the desolate planet has returned to normal. Tunin mission has been completed. Is he alive? It doesn't matter anymore. I will manage the desolate planet well in the future. Old Qi emphasized a few words and said with a smile. You think you have done it perfectly. But in fact, everything is under my control. For example, the little panda, the raccoons, and the baby elephant. By the way, you should have discovered it. Right? The baby elephant looks like it hasn't had time to do anything yet. But in fact it can't grow up at all. Old Qi laughed loudly. That's because it's not an elephant at all. Guanqi was horrified when she heard it. She never thought that her grandfather would be such a person. Contributing to the evolution of mankind is what those lower animals should do. And it is also their honor. And your eldest nephew. Why didn't he die? I clearly arranged a trap to send him to death. But it's not surprising that your family has some rare life-saving skills. Old Qi stood up. And it was obvious that this conversation had come to an end. Tell your eldest nephew that if there is a next time, he will not be so lucky. Watching the chess listener's grandfather's point of view, he said in disbelief, obviously. He didn't say that when he asked me to go to the desolate planet. People always change. And a person does not necessarily have only one face. Wanishao was speechless, not knowing how to comfort Guanqi. Not only Guanqi, but also Wanishao guessed that Lang Qichu accomplice must have come the moment the Third Legion appeared. But he did not expect that this accomplice was actually Old Qi. The fact that the always amiable Old Qi was actually a hidden big boss was a big shock to everyone. Guanqi's first reaction when he saw the live broadcast was not to blame Du Liang for broadcasting and ruining Old Qi's reputation, which was already a good result. If Guanqi lowered his eyes and couldn't help asking, can he get a reduced sentence? Guanqi shook his head slightly. But Guanqi didn't see it, and just laughed at himself. Why ask you this? You are the same as me. How can you know this inside story? At this time, the victim Jiang Tunin was sitting in the aircraft, and Chui was watching the live broadcast in the back row. Gossiping, this person is really not simple. He actually hit so deeply. So what should we do? Chui asked curiously. Is there anyone who hides deeper than him? You humans are really a magical species. Obviously everyone is of the same race. But they come out unevenly. Be more rigorous. No one here is human. Xieji couldn't help saying. Compared to this, I'm a little curious. How did they mobilize the Third Legion? Mendez. Jiang Tunin said the name with certainty. Thinking of the lively and cheerful boy she met on the day she came to the Interstellar. This time, without Jiang Tunin continuing to say, Xieji guessed it. And his face became not so good. Ming Desi's father is Xie Zhao's adjutant. The two have worked together for decades. Since Ming Desi is here, Xieji is a little worried about Xie Zhao's safety. Jiang Tunin naturally saw Xieji's emotions and said calmly, after sending us there, you can go home first. We can really handle it here. Chui nodded in agreement. As a person, you must have the courage to challenge yourself. Don't worry. I will protect Nan Nan. This is not the time to be polite. And Xieji no longer refuses. Although he is still somewhat worried about Jiang Tun's ability, he still chooses to respect her and his strong old friend Chui. The two were thrown off the aircraft, looking at the planet like an iron barrel. Chui couldn't help but fall into deep thought. This person is walking too fast. How can we go in with dignity? Jiang Tunin originally didn't plan to go in with dignity. Otherwise it would be difficult to explain clearly that she disappeared at the competition site and appeared outside the site. She reached out to Chui, and the delicate-looking Zerg instantly turned into a small butterfly, fluttering along Jiang Tunin's hand, and finally landed on her shoulder, like an exquisite decoration. After breaking the human body, Jiang Tunin's ability has really become much stronger. She can easily deal with situations like this that seem unsolvable to humans. Jiang Tunin looked around first and began to determine everyone's position. Su Xinzi and the rest of the classmates were in the arranged dormitory, Wang Yishao was joking with the people of the Third Legion, probably looking for a way to get out or enter the competition venue. Guanqi looked solemn, sitting in the lounge without saying a word, looking at a blank projection screen. And I don't know what he was thinking. Only Du Liang. Jiang Tunan felt that under the building where she was, there was enough explosives to destroy everything. Old Qi did not leave, but stood by the window and looked into the distance, smiling. Du Liang. We have been colleagues for so many years, and it is not bad to have a good reputation together when we leave. Du Liang did not react, calmly holding the thermos cup to drink tea. And after a long time he wondered, since you know that you can't walk out alive, what are you doing? The last story. I tell you, and also tell it to myself. Old Qi was the one who asked the tree spirit for energy. At that time, he was still a student who had just graduated, without awakening superpowers, and could only be an ordinary person. But his mental strength was still strong, and he was responsible for finding traces of various ancient creatures in the wild. The existence of ancient creatures can not only prove the civilization of the ancient blue planet, but also be used to restore the ecological environment on the Interstellar. Old Qi accidentally fell into this planet while searching for a beast. When he was dying, he heard a human voice. Why are you here? The strong desire to survive made Old Qi unwilling to end his life here. He tried to ask for help, although he didn't know why this person came here alone. He was still struggling. Before falling into darkness, Old Qi was still thinking whether he could survive. As it turned out, he made the right bet. At first, Old Qi didn't expect that the person who saved him was not a human. All his wounds recovered as before, and the pain in his internal organs was gone. Old Qi thought that the other party had some incredible life-saving medicine, so he didn't ask more questions. Later, Mr. Qi found that the man who saved him didn't seem to have any intention of leaving with him, so he began to doubt. This place is so deserted that it is gloomy and scary except for a pitch-black tree. How could anyone be willing to stay here? After a period of getting along, Mr. Qi gradually recovered his health under the care of this strange little boy, and also discovered his secret. Mr. Qi had never seen such a human being who could survive without eating, drinking, or sleeping. The truth was about to be revealed, and Mr. Qi had a vague idea in his mind. These are all things that normal humans can't do. There are still too many things in the Interstellar waiting for human exploration, such as this unidentified creature that looks like a human, but can actually live forever. Mr. Qi began to guide this kind-hearted little boy quietly, and found that he really had abilities that humans didn't have. Mr. Qi tried to share some stories with him about the growth of humans. For some reason, this little boy, who is obviously not a human and is so simple that he is almost stupid, has compassion for humans. With this point in mind, the rest of the things will be easy to handle. Old Qi kept deepening the concept of human beings are weak and in urgent need of salvation. The boy believed it, and was even willing to give some of his strength to let Old Qi go back to save mankind. Old Qi had no idea of being a savior. He took these things because he thought they were useful at first, but he had not figured out how to use them. But no one expected that the development of things would always be beyond human control. Old Qi had just walked out of this planet when he ran into people from the Federation. Many ordinary people thought that the Federation and the Empire just had political differences. The Qi family could be regarded as a family of nobles, and Old Qi knew the deepest secrets. The reason why the Federation and the Empire were at odds was that they looked like the same species. One came early, and the other came late. Even if they were fighting for territory, they were destined not to live in harmony. It was because they had a common enemy that they could barely live in harmony. If the Zerg did not exist, the meaning of future wars would be the scramble for resources between the Empire and the Federation. Old Qi was captured by the Federation and brought back to the Federation. The Federation had been living in the interstellar space for many years earlier than the Empire, and its research on the interstellar space was more advanced than that of the Empire. This extraordinary technology conquered Old Qi, and he remembered the big pie he had painted for that monster. Transforming humans. What a wonderful wish. Immortality, what humans have been pursuing since ancient times, may be realized in his hands. In this way, the Federation got the support of Old Qi without spending a single soldier. This secret meeting did not alarm others. Old Qi went from a captive to a guest of honor, and the Federation even promised to help Old Qi carry out all his work in the Empire at all costs. Under the guidance of the Federation, Old Qi went to the desolate planet, trying to find the secrets that the Federation had not yet successfully deciphered. But no one could have imagined that the desolate planet was too strange. as if it had its own consciousness, and refused their entry. Old Chi secretly dropped the unknown substance he brought back on the desolate planet. And soon after, the desolate planet was wrapped in gray fog, and people in it could not see anything clearly. This proved one thing more, that the desolate planet was worth exploring. So, Old Chi went against all odds and, with the help of the Federation, put all the ancient creatures they had captured here. The young and strong and the newly born were taken away by them as experimental subjects. And the remaining old, weak and disabled were left on the deserted planet to fend for themselves. They did this for decades without being discovered. But he did not expect that an experimental subject that was carelessly let go would have the power to subvert everything. Old Chi looked at Du Liang in front of him and sighed. Do you know why I chose you as the successor of the deserted planet? This is exactly what Du Liang was curious about. He had so many people to choose from, but he chose to drag himself into the water. Of course it's because Xie Xiao, who has a promising future, is standing behind you. Old Chi laughed loudly. The Du family is a famous family in the empire, compared with other families with many branches. Their family has a pitiful number of people, but the descendants are extremely outstanding, and there has never been a waste. Even if Old Chi does not know how his family did it, it does not prevent him from seeing the value of the children of the Du family. Du Liang should be Qi Lao's junior sister. Du Liang is devoted to her studies, while her sister is engaged to her childhood sweetheart Xie Xiao. The Xie family is one of the most powerful families in the empire, and the emperors of the empire have relied on the Xie family. If he can be related to them, Qi Lao will not worry that someone will suspect him. The facts also prove that his calculations are very correct. If it weren't for the unexpected appearance of Jiang Tunin, no one would have discovered any problems on the desolate planet. He looked at his junior sister in front of him, who was also his most trusted subordinate for many years, Du Liang. Sometimes people are too smart, but it's not a good thing. If you didn't know anything, you wouldn't be sitting here today. Du Liang also showed a perfect smile. If I wasn't smart, I wouldn't be sitting here chatting with you now. She glanced at the time, and it was almost 2 hours away from what Qi Lao said. She stood up, took a deep look at this senior, who was both her teacher and friend, and said regretfully, "You are indeed smart, and have made every possible plan. The only thing you didn't consider was that chess piece. Is it really fragile?" Qi Lao's heart skipped a beat, stared at Du Liang for a while, and said calmly, "You still want to threaten me? Our biggest trump card has been revealed. Unless Jiang Tunin is not a human being." The door was pushed open from the outside, and it was Jiang Tunin. Behind her was the pale Guanqi. Guanqi seemed to have experienced some kind of blow, avoiding the sight of Old Chi. The moment he saw his granddaughter, Old Chi understood everything. They had planned everything long ago, waiting for him to fall into the trap. Both sides were gambling, and the weights were all laid flat. In the end, he was not as skilled as others, but Old Chi couldn't figure it out. He looked at Jiang Tunin and always felt that something seemed to have changed in this girl. Guanqi stood beside her, like a flower that suddenly lost its color. It was about to fall. "So, did I not guess your family's trump card correctly? Or was there something wrong with my chess piece?" Old Chi reached out and took the cane placed beside him, and stood up gracefully, as if he was willing to die with a clear mind. "Grandpa, is it possible that you were wrong from the beginning?" Guanqi's voice trembled, and she still didn't dare to look at the old man she loved so much. Old Chi smiled slightly, stood there and looked at Guanqi. "Guanqi, this is the last lesson that Grandpa taught you. All choices are actually a gamble. The winner is the king and the loser is the bandit. Never regret the path you have chosen." Having said that, what else did Guanqi not understand? It was hard to say whether it was disappointment or loss. Guanqi just felt that she seemed to have never known her grandfather. She thought that the grandfather who taught her how to be a person and brought her up was an upright and bottom-line person. But she didn't expect the truth to be so outrageous. "So can you tell me what was wrong?" Old Chi asked again. "Probably evil cannot prevail over good." Jiang Tunin smiled slightly, his eyes far away. In the few times he met Jiang Tunin, Old Chi did not remember that this girl had an extraordinary demeanor. She only felt that she looked like someone who was not ordinary. But she still needed to be polished. The one standing in front of him now seemed to be in line with his imagination of someone who had experienced the ups and downs. He said in disbelief, "Are you not a human? Why are you cursing when you can just talk?" Du Liang stood up, blocked Old Chi's sight for Jiang Tunin, and smiled. "I know that everyone here is yours. But are you sure you can leave alive?" Old Chi was silent, and looked at Jiang Tunin deeply. If you are not a human, you should know it clearly. Right? Otherwise, why didn't Xie Zhi come with you? You went to save Xie Xiao. Right? Jiang Tunin's face did not change, as if he did not hear what he said. Looking at the grandfather, who had completely torn off the mask in front of him, Guanxi took a few steps back, his lips trembling, and finally said nothing. Until the last moment. No one can know who will laugh last. Qi Lao's cane hit the ground hard, and he shouted with full energy, "Come! Take Guanxi away!" Before Guanxi could struggle, she was decisively tied up by someone who came from behind. No matter how she made a noise, it was useless. She was taken away ruthlessly, with the sound of the cane hitting the ground. Jiang Tunin had already reacted quickly. The vines were like a barrier, quickly wrapped them up, but did not let Qi Lao get hurt. Just added a layer of protection between them. I really didn't expect that you would choose to protect me as well. Qi Lao smiled slightly and looked around with nostalgia. Jiang Tunin nodded and said indifferently, "I'm still waiting for you to go out and confess your guilt in person. Of course, I can't let you die here." She also looked around, and there were actually dots of light in the darkness. These are all the animals and people who died in the experiment. We have erected a monument for each of them. Qi Lao said deeply. They are making sacrifices for the progress of mankind, which is much more meaningful than living a mediocre life. Your idea was wrong from the beginning. Jiang Tunin tilted his head and looked at him, sighing. Just like your existence, it is to declare that the human transformation plan cannot succeed, and it is impossible to go against the will of heaven. You are my most perfect experimental subject, with strong abilities, and now you can even draw your sword against me. Qi Lao Dao. Jiang Tunin shook his head. It is precisely because you feel that everything is under control that you have fallen into the current situation. There is a high probability of failure, but you still choose to take a gamble. It's not just the existence of Jiang Tunin, the experimental subject, but also the unknown secrets of the Du family. Jiang Tunin didn't expect that Mr. Qi was so stubborn. Even at this moment, he still firmly believed that he was fine, and all the steps were fine. I lost, so I accept the punishment of failure calmly. Mr. Qi smiled. Are you worthy of these innocent people who were killed in the name of sacrifice? Jiang Tunin clenched his fists and asked in a low voice. Don't worry about it. I have lived for so many years, and I feel that I have done my best. As for what you said, I don't think it's a fault. Jiang Tunin stopped trying to tangle with old Qi and raised his hand high. A magical scene appeared before their eyes. The shaky light spots suddenly gathered together, as if they had awakened their consciousness, and all flew towards Jiang Tunin palm. Old Qi looked at this scene and couldn't help but be alert. Jiang Tunin power was stronger than he thought. Even these could receive her orders. There was a rustling sound in the darkness, and one after another short humans emerged from the bushes, with strange lights flashing in their eyes, staring at him closely. Old Qi felt a little tight in his heart because of these gazes. His fingers holding the cane trembled slightly, fearing that the group of children in front of him would do something. These are all the experimental subjects that you have discarded. Right? Jiang Tunin walked forward a few steps and stood in the same camp with a group of children. He turned his head and looked at old Qi. I don't think you can remember what they looked like. After all, for you, even these tombstones were built with a purpose. A cold sweat broke out on Qi Lao's back. His cane moved again, and a group of mutant animals appeared silently. The largest one was the bat-like animal that he had seen in Lang Chichu. It was still ignorant, staring at them with a pair of vertical pupils, as if it didn't understand what they were doing. Its huge wings hung on the ground, revealing only its pointed beak. This experiment is enough to protect the safety of a planet. It is perfect for resisting the Zerg. My years have not been in vain. But you stupid humans just don't accept it. Qi Lao said in a deep voice. The cost is also very high. The service life of your weapon is only 1 or 2 years, but it will cost a lot of manpower, material resources and blood. Qi Lao, you are no longer the director worthy of our respect. Du Liang sighed and looked at the thousands of troops behind Qi Lao. Both sides knew that this matter could not be resolved peacefully. They could not convince each other, and the only choice was to fight. Qi Lao took the lead and raised his right hand high. Children, go and enjoy the delicious food. He stared closely at Jiang Tunin and Du Liang, as well as the group of children behind them who seemed useless, and was a little nervous. It was precisely because he was not sure what they had in the end that it was more worth looking forward to. Jiang Tunnen did not disappoint him, but just raised his hand. The wind was blowing hard, and Old Chi was already a little unstable. But they were as stable as Mount Tai, and the wind seemed to be blowing in front of them. The mutant animals behind Old Chi also slowed down their pace, and many of them howled from their throats, as if to cheer themselves up. Even the huge four-legged beast had no time to observe them, and was trying to stabilize its body. "Aren't you a plant-based superpower?" The intermittent voice came from the wind, and Old Chi was a little surprised. He poked the cane in his hand down a few points to ensure that he could stand in the strong wind. Jiang Tunnen did not intend to answer his question. Looking at the thick black fog under their feet, he took out a bead from his pocket. The flashing balls of light approached her without hesitation. Or to be more precise, the bead? Jiang Tunnen let go. Hand. The glossy beads almost merged with the white light ball. The wind was still blowing, but Old Chi watched everything happen. Those beads that lost their function in human hands seemed to have changed into something else in Jiang Tunnen hands. The blackness of the entire space was gradually dispelled, and the mutant animals began to be restless, as if they were not used to the dazzling light. Jiang Tunnen did not stop, and flicked the light ball with his fingers. They followed the wind like riding a roller coaster. Wherever they went, all the darkness retreated, and all that was left was the brilliant light that did not exist in this space. Old Chi looked at this scene in disbelief. This planet is the birthplace of everything. In order to return the thing that helped him, Old Chi asked to build a piece of pure land for those experimental subjects here, just to make it easier for them to rest in peace after leaving. Originally, this land was shrouded in darkness, and he was just adding bricks and tiles to it. The so-called most dangerous place is the safest place. Old Chi has worked hard for many years just to bury this time bomb in the territory of the 4th Legion. He was almost discovered by Xie several times, but he dealt with it every time. As for the choice of setting the venue here, it was also the result of Chi Lao's painstaking efforts. Everything started from here. He planned to end the lives of those who opposed him here, in order to build an unaffected venue. Chi Lao spent a lot of financial and material resources. Now it seems that everything is like a waste of effort. He was unwilling to accept this outcome. He was full of energy and shouted loudly, "Attack with all your strength!" The mutant animals behind him roared and ran towards Jiang Tunnen. It was not easy for them to fight against the strong wind. Just at this time, rain began to fall in the sky. Chi Lao knew that this was also a conspiracy by Jiang Tunnen. He gritted his teeth and tried to take a few steps forward, but failed. Chi Lao realized that he seemed to be imprisoned in the same place. Except for going down, he could not move in all other directions. He began to feel scared belatedly, stammering his lips. But he didn't know what to say. The mutant animals were frantically trying to compete with the storm until the group of light balls passed by them. The restless mutant animals all stopped at the same time, as if they were appeased, and were blown back a few meters by the wind. The children behind Jiang Tunnen moved. They all carried a small basket in their hands, which contained mutant mushrooms, which they pinched and planted on the land. Old Chi couldn't understand what Jiang Tunnen was doing, but soon he felt it. A strange fragrance came, and his head began to hurt. The mutant mushrooms that had just been planted were poisonous. Jiang Tunnen's strength was so terrifying. The mutant plants were ripened in her hands, and the toxicity was even stronger than before. What was she trying to prove? To prove that she was strong? Old Chi reluctantly said, "Sure enough. As one of my most successful experiments, your ability is also amazing. You are the goal I want to work hard for. Don't you even understand?" Jiang Tunnen rolled up his sleeves and motioned Old Chi to look. There were many small blood spots on the original body left by injections, which formed a huge contrast with this smooth arm. Jiang Tunnen knew it, and she guessed that Old Chi also knew it. Old Chi's face changed drastically, looking at Jiang Tunnen, trembling, and asked, "What on earth are you? You are really not my test subject anymore. The moment you called me a test subject, I had already changed." Jiang Tunnen showed a mysterious smile and said mysteriously, "I know you are strong. But so what? Now you can only be our defeated general, watching your kingdom being destroyed." Jiang Tunnen said word by word. Old Chi calmed down and said with a smile, "Have you ever considered that I might just be a tool to delay time? The real thing to deal with is not this old immortal thing like me." Countless thoughts flashed through his mind, and Du Liang held Jiang Tunnen's hand. Go and help Xie. I can handle it here." Jiang Tunnen had seen Du Liang's ability. When she raised her hand, the whole space seemed to be controlled. It was at this moment that old Chi really recognized his junior sister. You are really not human. Is this the trump card of your Du family? He struggled to fight against the idea of wanting to fall asleep in his mind, and finally understood why Du Liang and Jiang Tunnen were sure of victory from the moment they came in. With weak humans, they are no match for these things. Old Chi didn't even know what they were. Du Liang was still the same as before. Looking at Old Chi, I didn't want to say it originally. I am also a human being. I don't know why you have such a big misunderstanding of humans. Is this the self-esteem of the weak? We two old guys will solve the matter by ourselves. As for the future, it should have been handed over to those children long ago. Du Liang sat down casually, waved at the huge four-legged beast, and saw it flying over obediently. Old Chi looked at this scene in surprise. Before he could react, he saw Du Liang slightly raised his hand, and the four-legged beast that he was proud of opened its bloody mouth towards him without hesitation. A darkness came, and Du Liang's voice sounded, in order to prevent any more accidents. Please rest at its mouth for a while. At this moment, Old Chi's eyes were dark. He never thought that he would be insulted like this at this moment. The mouth of the four-legged beast was very spacious, like a dark cocoon that trapped him. In this darkness, Chi Lao began to think about the origins of Du Liang and Jiang Tunnen. They must not be ordinary humans. He had never seen a superpower who could control the weather. The last one who had this ability was the Zerg. As for Du Liang, she was like an ordinary person, and she didn't even have superpowers. What made people look up to her was her strong mental power. But over the years, no one knew what her mental power was for. Mental power was strong enough to control all creatures? This was simply unheard of. Du Liang outside rubbed her forehead gently because of excessive use of mental power. She looked at the group of mutant animals in front of her, and couldn't help but feel a little overwhelmed. As a non-superpower, it was still a bit difficult to deal with these. But she didn't bother for too long. And the accompanying beat released by Jiang Tunnen released amazing power. Not only was the darkness dispelled, but the mutant animals were also trapped by the mutant mushrooms growing against the wind. And the floating cattail-like plants after the entire space was lit up also entangled them, swallowing those behemoths silently. Chapter 104. Jiang Tunnen was trying to contact Xie, but she had not succeeded. She looked up and saw a familiar face. Surprised? Mendez smiled and looked at Jiang Tunnen. The first task he took over was to find out Jiang Tunnen's itinerary and send her to the deserted planet safely. Mendez himself had no sense of guilt. The world was bustling for profit, and Jiang Tunnen had nothing to lose, but got a bodyguard like him. But Mendez did not expect Jiang Tunnen to grow so fast. From a little girl who needed protection to a person that everyone feared. Now everyone always showed subtle fear when mentioning her, and they were more cautious than when mentioning Xie. In the final analysis, what they feared most was what I also had in my control. Jiang Tunnen happened to be such an existence, and Mendez was more interested in Jiang Tunnen. He had been waiting here for a while. This was the only exit. Mendez had guessed that Jiang Tunnen could find this place easily. As expected, as if there was something urgent, she quickly broke through this illusion. Want to talk? Mendez smiled, and he was 90% sure that Jiang Tunnen would agree to him. But he didn't expect that Jiang Tunnen just showed a subtle look. Not for now. I'm in a hurry. Why would there be such a person? He was clearly standing on the opposite side. But he still shamelessly asked to talk to her? Jiang Tunnen was unbelievable, and chose to run away with the aircraft, without giving Mendez a chance to speak. Jiang Tunnen hesitated for a few seconds, and decided to go to Xie home in Pingxing first. According to him, when their family has time, they will go back there to get together. Although Jiang Tunnen guessed that the possibility of them being trapped there was very low. But that was the only place Jiang Tunnen knew where they could find their whereabouts. Xie lost his trace after separating from her. Jiang Tunnen was a little unsure of what bad things he had done now. So he had to use the dumbest method, go straight to his nest. It turned out that there was nothing wrong with Jiang Tunnen's method. She rushed all the way to Pingxing, and then found that Xie's house was silent, and even the housekeeper who had entertained them before was not there. There must be something wrong when things are abnormal. Jiang Tunnen decisively released her mental power, and found something wrong. Xie's house had soil and plants from the barren planet that she and Du Liang sent. Logically speaking, they could survive without much care. But now, all these things are dead. Jiang Tunnen climbed over the inconspicuous fence of Xie's house, without hesitation, and entered the Xie family's house. A small-scale exploration did not require Jiang Tunnen to spend much energy. She could even feel all the wrong places in Sia's house. The other party might still know her at the same level as before. Jiang Tunnen staggered into Sia's house and ran directly to the basement. Du Chen, who was sitting in the basement, looked at Jiang Tunnen, who ran over and smiled with relief. Heroes have always been young. And Tunnen will be able to shoulder great responsibilities in the future. The person sitting at the door didn't think so. He smiled coldly and watched Jiang Tunnen walk in arrogantly on the surveillance camera, and even glanced at the surveillance camera arrogantly. Young and frivolous people are the most likely to fall. Du Chen didn't refute, but just smiled slightly, looking at Jiang Tunnen with loving eyes. Maybe because they all have different bloodlines. They are very close to Jiang Tunnen abilities. Obviously, he is still the same person, but he looks like he has been reborn. Thinking of this, Du Chen couldn't help but feel sorry for Jiang Tunnen. There are still many children in the galaxy who are as old as her, but they are still flowers in the greenhouse, held in the palms of their family's hands and mouths. For fear of any accidents, Jiang Tunnen has already started to follow them in battles, helping them everywhere. She has endless things to do every day, and now she even has to come alone to save her. For the first time, Du Chen regretted that she didn't learn some self-defense skills from Du Liang when she was young. It's always better than nothing. She wasn't sure where her eldest son was now, and why he let Jiang Tunnen come alone to save her. But she could guess that the situation was probably tense now. Otherwise Du Liang would not let Jiang Tunnen come alone to save her. Originally, Du Chen should have been in the Research Institute on weekdays. But in order to make time to watch the finals of Jiang Tunnen College League, she compressed all her work together and tried to get the work done first. Coming back to get the information was also a sudden idea. She clearly didn't tell anyone, but she was dragged by the other party the moment she entered the door. Du Chen felt a little guilty. Xie Ji and Xie Xiao had both told her that things were not peaceful recently, but she had completely forgotten about it. Jiang Tunnen was quite familiar with the Xie family, and she found the location of the basement. Xie Ji did not appear here, most likely because he went to help Xie Xiao. So the one trapped here was most likely Du Chen. Du Chen is a scientific researcher who is very easy to handle in the Empire. She is always accompanied by a team of people to protect her. If something happens to her, Jiang Tunnen can only think of internal embezzlement. As she thought, she swaggered open the door of the basement and saw a familiar face. I didn't expect it to be you. Jiang Tunnen looked at Jin Song with a complicated expression. A little puzzled. Aren't you an interstellar pirate? Why are you here? Little Du Sua's life is precious. It just so happens that we old friends haven't seen each other for a long time. So I came to see you to reminisce about the past, Jin Song said with a smile. Jiang Tunnen first took a look at Du Chen's condition and found that she was not bad. There was a stack of papers in front of her. Most likely, she had not given up her career in this situation. Jin Song was also helpless about Du Chen's behavior. He signaled his men to put away their weapons and walked out personally. Let's talk. Jiang Tunnen nodded in disbelief. She was very interested in Jin Song's purpose. Although Jin Song was the #1 interstellar pirate on the Empire's wanted list, Jiang Tunnen had been taught so many times that he knew that one could not judge a person's goodness or badness just by looking at these data. She followed Jin Song out and was in the mood to tease him. Didn't you see that it was Captain Liu who came? Aren't you a little disappointed? Jin Song's face became more serious, and he shook his head and said, this time I came to do business. I thought I could wait for Xie Ji, but I didn't expect it to be you. This occasion is different from the past. You are still a child. This is what Jiang Tunnen meant to retreat. But Jiang Tunnen felt that he was rebellious, and he didn't refute what Jin Song said. He just glanced at the top of his head and asked, do you want to try with me? We can talk about the conditions after you win. This statement was very general. In Jin Song's ears, Jiang Tunnen was ignorant of the world and wanted to challenge him. But Jiang Tunnen knew that this was not a provocation, but a statement of facts. She was different from the past, let alone Jin Song. Probably their entire team combined might not be able to beat her. Jiang Tunnen subconsciously touched the whip at his waist, and suddenly remembered that he had been buried in the arena. He couldn't help but feel a little resentful towards Lang Qichu. It was already like that. But he still had to drag someone to be the scapegoat. Without a weapon at hand, Jiang Tunnen looked around and didn't find any better weapons. In the end, he chose to summon a branch and hold it in his hand to act as a whip. Jin Song looked at the branch in her hand, and didn't realize the seriousness of the problem. He teased, I watched your game. And you were holding a whip in your hand. Are you looking down on me? The whip is lost. Jiang Tunnen didn't want to say more. And the soft branch directly whipped Jin Song with a sharp sound of breaking through the air. Jin Song's face became a little serious. And he found that Jiang Tunnen was serious. And decided to teach this ignorant sister on behalf of Lu Qi that people should be humble. He took out a dagger, with a warm bead inlaid on the top, surrounded by a ring of jade. Jiang Tunnen didn't even have to try to find out that the bead was a random bead, and couldn't help but advise, you might as well change your weapon. This one might not be very handy. Jin Song didn't believe it. Of course, thinking that Jiang Tunnen was deliberately distracting him, I have used this dagger since I was a child. And you are the first person to advise me to change my weapon. Jiang Tunnen didn't know how to explain it. So she had to prove with her own actions that she was not talking nonsense. Jiang Tunnen threw the branch in her hand directly to attack Jin Song's hand holding the dagger. Jin Song didn't block it, but planned to use the dagger to directly cut the branch that Jiang Tunnen had connected, giving her a painless lesson. Unexpectedly, whether it was because the branch was tough or the dagger was blunt after being used for too long, it failed to successfully cut it. After careful feeling, Jin Song found that his dagger seemed to be trembling and resisting fighting with Jiang Tunnen. Jin Song was puzzled. Although this dagger had been with him for many years, it was not able to understand human nature. It was not a spiritual weapon. How could this happen? He reluctantly stretched out his other hand to hold the branch, and found that it was very flexible. He quickly slashed the dagger where it was wrapped around him. Jiang Tunnen had clearly seen his intention, but still let him do it. Still failed to hurt a leaf on the branch. Jin Song was shocked. He was a little unbelievable. He looked at the dagger in his hand, then looked at Jiang Tunnen, and his expression became serious. So what did you do to my dagger? Jiang Tunnen shook his head and asked again, do you want to change a weapon? Jin Song did not refuse this time, but pulled out a Miao Dao from the side of his calf. It was as long as his calf. It looked like it was often used, and was well maintained. Jiang Tunnen took a look and took the lead again. The branches and leaves rushed straight to Jin Song, or the hand holding the weapon. The Miao Dao in Jin Song's hand was like a small scalpel. It turned slightly and chopped at the branches and leaves. This time, he finally succeeded in cutting off a leaf. But the flexibility of the branch was far beyond Jin Song's imagination. He was a little incredible, remembering the first time he saw Jiang Tunnen. Her embarrassed look. Compared to now, she was like two different people. The members of Jin Song team who were watching on the side also showed subtle expressions, watching them fight back and forth, all a little surprised. Among them, there were many members who had met Jiang Tunnen several times. Seeing the natural cooperation between Jiang Tunnen and the vines, they were secretly surprised at her rapid growth. Even Du Chen held his face with one hand and watched Jiang Tunnen movements, and casually asked the young man who was watching him, can we use the optical computer to record it? It's a very exciting duel. The team member who was asked to raise the optical computer silently pointed it at the two people, and looked at Jin Song's embarrassed look, and couldn't help covering his eyes, just hoping that Jin Song would not lose too badly. Chapter 105. The two fought hard, and Jin Song was secretly shocked by Jiang Tunnen's growth rate. Whether in terms of moves or speed, she had improved a lot compared to before, and she had directly jumped from a novice to a seasoned veteran. If you must make an analogy, Jiang Tunnen's level is like a black hole AI in Jin Song's eyes. No matter how much she was given, she would eat it, and successfully counterattacked, and even very skillfully. What special training did you go through on the deserted planet? Jin Song gradually couldn't resist, and began to distract Jiang Tunnen's attention, trying to find an opportunity to sneak attack. No special training. Probably self-taught. Jiang Tunnen smiled, and let Jin Song talk nonsense. She couldn't say that she finally found her complete memory, so she became Jiang Nuhila Tunnen. The branches in his hand suddenly split, and Jin Song's attempt to divert attention and win this game failed. Jiang Tunnen moved his wrist and easily removed the weapon in his hand. After Jin Song calmed down for a while, Jiang Tunnen asked, can we talk now? Jin Song looked at the branches that had already climbed to his waist and nodded helplessly. I saw you take this thing and go in directly. Please stay away from me. Jin Song did come after receiving the mission. The other party spent a lot of money to appoint him to take Du Chen away. As a member who grew up in the Empire, Jin Song certainly knew the importance of Du Chen. Fearing to alert the enemy, He took on this mission and delayed until the deadline before leaving. But no one expected that it was such a coincidence that Du Chen happened to go home at this time and Jin Song happened to ambush at this time. Looking at each other, it would be inappropriate to cover up the truth. So Jin Song had to invite Du Chen to go home. And he brought a team of people to guard here in 3 layers inside and outside. The client must not know that when Jin Song was still begging for food under the former interstellar pirate, he was saved by Du Chen, who was on a mission. Since then, he has secretly contacted Jin Song and sent a lot of enlightenment books and materials to these orphans, who were not wanted by anyone. The former interstellar pirates adopted children to provide material life. But they were not a formal place after all. And she spent a lot of money to hire a few good teachers. Du Chen helped with this matter. Although she did not show up, Jin Song knew that all this happened after they met. When the leader of the interstellar pirates died, he sent Lu Qi and other children to escape, which was incredibly smooth. Jin Song also guessed that it was probably Du Chen who helped. However, because of Du Chen's identity issues in recent years, the two have not been in contact for a long time. Jin Song was worried about bringing a bad influence to Du Chen, so he could only secretly pay attention to Du Chen's movements. Jiang Tunan secretly said, "If you really want to be kind, no one knows how much trouble your good deeds at a certain moment will save you in the future." Since the other party wanted Du Chen, Jin Song was struggling with how to report. He was in a dilemma now. He didn't dare to let Du Chen go, but he didn't dare to take her to report. And he knew that Du Chen was the safest in his hands. Jiang Tunan said decisively, "It's easy. Take me." Jin Song was about to say she was fooling around. But when he saw Jiang Tunan's determined eyes, he hesitated again. "You are not similar to Du Su in any way. Isn't it like sending you to death to take you there?" Jin Song said bluntly. He knew that the people on the deserted planet had many strategies, so he couldn't help but have some hope. Jiang Tunan was sure that she could turn into Du Chen. But for humans, this kind of face-changing without any tools was a bit scary. So she didn't bring it up, since the other party can't even catch Du Su's whereabouts. Is there a possibility that the other party is actually not familiar with Du Su at all? Jiang Tunan analyzed. You talked to the buyer more often, and carefully recalled whether the other party's attitude showed that he was familiar with Du Su? Jin Song was stunned, and really thought hard. The other party did not seem to be familiar with Du Chen. Not only did he not know her schedule, leaving him to take his chances, but he was even outrageous. He was not even sure of Du Chen's location at the time, and only threw over an address of Du Chen's home, which seemed very casual compared to the previous buyers. Under Jiang Tunan's deception, Jin Song agreed to this idea that sounded a bit outrageous. Jiang Tunan had already made up her mind. She guessed that the other party wanted Du Chen, mostly to threaten the Xie family father and son or the desolate planet. Even Qi Lao, who had been dormant for many years, suddenly appeared, indicating that something must have gone wrong with their organization, and they had to take action. According to everything that happened recently, the most reasonable guess is that the tree spirit began to take back the resentment it had sent out after awakening, causing all their experiments to have to stop. Otherwise, Mr. Qi wouldn't have to risk his life to revisit the place where he once met the tree spirit. The only safest place now is the desolate planet. Jiang Tunan thought. The director is being held by Mr. Qi and can't get back for a while. Xie Ji and his son are missing, so it's unrealistic for them to follow us. Otherwise, we have to assign people to protect the capital. So why not send her to the deserted planet? Jin Song didn't expect that Jiang Tunan came to this conclusion after thinking for so long. But there should only be a bunch of old, weak and disabled people left on the deserted planet now. Right? Jin Song laughed without hesitation. Lu Qi and Tang Kai followed Lang Qitong on a mission. Tung Nan was with Du Liang, and most of the fighters had left, leaving only the old, weak and disabled who were powerless, such as Professor Zhao and Professor Zhao. Even Shan stayed on a small planet near the deserted planet as the director of his orphanage, and he was too busy to do anything else. Jiang Tunan was not surprised at all why this person knew so much about the situation on the desolate planet. Instead, he said meaningfully, if you want to pursue Lu Qi, you have to get past us first. Jin Song's white and tender cheeks instantly turned red. What do you know as a child? Lu Qi and I are not that kind of relationship. Indeed, aren't we childhood sweethearts? Captain Lu should have many childhood sweethearts like you. Right? Jiang Tunan winked at Jin Song. seeing that Jin Song was about to be angry like a teapot. Jiang Tunan quickly brought the topic back. Don't look down on our desolate planet. The animals there are more powerful than each other. And protection is not a problem. The most important reason is that the desolate planet is her, Jiang Tunan, territory. Any disturbance on it cannot escape her perception. And it is as safe as it can be. Jin Song saw her firm attitude and guessed that the desolate planet probably has some trump cards that cannot be told to outsiders. Although Jiang Tunan is not very old. Based on Jin Song's experience with her, she is more reliable. So Jin Song agreed. They planned to send Du Qin to the wasteland planet to settle down first, and then find the client. This was the first time Jin Song set foot on the land of the wasteland planet. But he found that it was completely different from the barren planet he imagined. He had watched the live broadcast of the wasteland planet in his spare time before. But he didn't expect that he would be more shocked when he really came here. Every plant and tree here is very fresh, which is a magnificent scene that Jin Song has never seen in the Interstellar. The group of small animals seemed to have sensed Jiang Tunan movements in advance. They were still on the aircraft, but they could see the lively figures squatting below. This was also the first time Du Qin set foot on the land of the wasteland planet after many years. Although she had never been here, she helped to complete many infrastructure projects on the wasteland planet, so she was not unfamiliar with the wasteland planet. Bao Bao had seen Jin Song before. When he saw him again, his gray eyes were full of vigilance. He grabbed Jiang Tunan close and dragged her away. Why did you bring this human back? He's so dangerous. Fu Fu also took a defensive posture at this time, watching Jin Song and the team behind him vigilantly, and his tail kept wagging, as if he was worried about Jin Song's unusual movements. There is a mission that requires cooperation with him. Jiang Tunan did not perfunctorily explain to the cubs, but explained seriously. This is the mother of the lamb. Can you help the lamb take care of her? The cubs had already seen Du Qin and hugged his thighs. A panda that stood up more than 1 meter was sitting on the ground and acting coquettishly at this time. The lethality was not small. At least Du Qin could not withstand this wave of attacks, and easily lifted the cubs weighing dozens of kilograms. Everyone was stunned. They didn't expect that Du Qin, who looked weak, was so strong. She smiled shyly. Although my fighting power is not high, I often move things in the research institute, so I am quite strong. Jiang Tunan glanced at Jin Song, who was intact. If it was someone else, he might not be able to catch Du Qin easily. Professor Zhao and Professor Zhao came late. When they saw Du Qin, they were stunned for a moment before saying, "Is Du Liang okay now?" I just felt a mental fluctuation. Many things in the deserted star base rely on Du Liang mental power. Although Professor Zhao is an ordinary person, he can judge it through various instruments inside the base. No big deal. Jiang Tunan guessed that Du Liang and Old Qi had a conflict. There was her, and the tree spirit's power left there. Old Qi couldn't handle it, and definitely had no time to hurt Du Liang. She said, "Professor Zhao, you have worked hard in recent days. As the oldest in the garden." Professor Zhao glared. "Why do you mention age? I am still a young and strong middle-aged man." "Wow. Will middle-aged humans have white hair?" A tender voice sounded, and Cece hurriedly covered the mouth of the third child, who had grown to the same age as her, not giving it a chance to speak. Tutu doesn't understand this. Some humans only like to take black and white photos. The child poked his head out and spoke for Professor Zhao. Cece child did not inherit Cece intelligence and seemed to have a bad brain. Who should they, the herbivores, not offend the most? Isn't it Professor Zhao? The child blinked and hinted at Professor Zhao frantically. Professor Zhao, am I right? As a reward, should we give the baby something that can help him grow? For example, fruits like apples. The bloody storm outside did not affect the operation of the desolate planet at all. It was like an independent little world, where all troubles disappeared. Du Qin hugged the baby and followed Jiang Tunan's instructions completely, saying goodbye to them. Don't fight head-on. Remember to protect yourself. Chapter 106. The matter was far more complicated than they had imagined. Jiang Tunan thought that after solving the problem of Qi Lao, who had obtained the energy of the tree spirit, the matter had come to an end. But she did not expect that there would be 2 Qi Lao. Jiang Tunan looked at Qi Lao in front of her and asked hesitantly, "Can I call Guanqi?" Qi Lao laughed, looked at Jiang Tunan, and said calmly, "It seems that you are not very confident in your judgment ability." Although Jiang Tunan was no longer a human, she did not have a scanning function, and could not judge the difficult matter of real or fake Monkey King. And even if one of them was real, and the other was fake, this Ji Lao appeared in the war zone between the Federation and the Zerg. Obviously, his identity was also problematic. Right? Jiang Tunan squinted and looked into the distance, and found that the Zerg general had replaced a worm she had never seen before, and was directing his worms to do something unknown. Did you see it? I think you must be very curious. Why can we copy the power of the Zerg? Old Chi sighed. It's a pity that those are defective products. These are the Zerg I want. Jiang Tunan looked over again, and this time he found something wrong. The group of Zerg looked no different from ordinary Zerg, but the aura on their bodies was not right, as if they were mixed with human blood. It's true that I am studying human evolution, but my first experimental subject is myself. Others think I am a monster, but only monsters can survive in this society. Right? Old Chi smiled. He and Lang Chichu, adopted son of the science monster, are like the same kind of people, and they are very crazy for experiments. Jiang Tunan couldn't understand why someone would try to merge himself with the Zerg. So you are schizophrenic? Jiang Tunan couldn't help looking at Old Chi in front of him, and he felt that he seemed to be no different from the one he saw not long ago. If he had to say a difference, it was probably just that their personalities were a little different, and this one seemed to be more cheerful. Old Chi still had the same cane in his hand. He kept stroking the dragon head and shook his head slightly. If I have to say, he is probably more merciful than me. After that, Old Chi pointed his cane to the distance. See? The family that has protected the empire for thousands of years is about to be destroyed. Jiang Tunan's heart skipped a beat, and she saw a white figure in the distance. According to Old Chi, she didn't need to get close to know that the team must be the Imperial Army led by Xie Ji or Xie Xiao. She calmed down, but Old Chi seemed to see through her plan and dissuaded her. Don't make useless struggles. Even if you kill me now, you can't change the facts of the future. So, is your ability to predict? Jiang Tunan asked. Old Chi shook his head. Only the Zerg god has the ability to predict the future. That is not something I can touch. I just tried to keep everything on track after thousands of deductions. But you didn't expect that Jin Song actually knew Du Qin, and would not care about money for this. You also didn't expect that I could actually walk to you alive. Jiang Tunan said coldly. Old Chi pointed to the sand table behind him, and said in a friendly manner, each of us is a chess piece on this sand table. If there are mistakes in some links, it is not a big deal. The result I want is what you see now. The father and son are imprisoned. In this way, the pillar of the empire falls, and it is a good time to implement the plan. Jiang Tunan didn't quite understand. She frowned and asked, since you know that this plan is destined to be opposed by many people, why do you insist on implementing it? Many epic-making events occurred, and they were not understood at first. Old Chi said deeply. So I am willing to be the sinner. When they benefit from it, they will thank me for my persistence. Jiang Tunan couldn't understand this paranoid brain circuit, and was greatly shocked. She felt a little unbelievable, but still said, then let's see who is more capable. She herself is the only trump card in this matter, and Jiang Tunan knows this clearly. Looking at the team in the distance, she released her mental power without hesitation, trying to see how to crack this pirated team pretending to be Zerg. It must be said that Old Chi has some means. At least the tree spirits didn't expect that he could use those grievances to such an extent. The leader of the team not far away was Xie Ji. He had dealt with Zerg a lot, and it didn't take him long to find something wrong. Xie Ji wanted to contact Chui, but found that the signal was blocked in this place. Most likely, the people on the other side came prepared. There were countless soldiers of the Empire behind him, unsure of the situation of the conflict on the other side. Xie Ji was very cautious. Lu Qi stood not far from him, and the first thing he felt was Jin Song's breath. The sword she usually carried was given by Jin Song that year. Perhaps because of this, she was particularly sensitive to his breath. But Lu Qi couldn't figure out why Jin Song was here. Interstellar pirates never participated in such a struggle between two countries. This was an unspoken rule. So Jin Song's appearance here was as shocking to Lu Qi as Leopard being beaten by Little Bear. Something seems to be wrong on the other side, Lu Qi said. Xie Ji nodded. His eyes swept over Lu Qi's sword. You also found it. Taking the telescope from the adjutant, Xie Ji saw several starships parked in the distance from a distance. Xie Ji touched his nose and sighed. It seems that someone doesn't want us to go back alive. Lu Qi took the telescope and saw the flag belonging to the Interstellar pirates. The astonishment on his face became more obvious. Who can actually invite Jin Song? It doesn't matter who it is. Siege smiled lightly. Nan Nan is here too. Lu Qi didn't know what happened on the field. He only knew that he was urgently transferred to Siege as an adjutant. And Teng Kai went to Lang Qitong. Logically speaking, these retired and experienced officers would not be called unless it was an emergency. Don't think so much. We just need to do the things in front of us, Siege said without hesitation. The companions behind us are all worthy of our trust. Aren't they? After separating from Jiang Tunnen, Siege followed Xiaoshao's lead. Logically speaking, the battle between the Zerg and the Federation is gradually heating up, and the possibility of the Zerg attacking the Empire on such a large scale is very small. But this kind of accident has occurred, and they must deal with it. The chaos created by Old Qi has made it very difficult for the Legion to deal with it. The Third Legion is obviously Old Qi's people, and even Xiaoshao, as a general, cannot contact them. The Fourth Legion is in a stalemate with the Third Legion, and the remaining legions are also controlled by Old Qi's people. The people behind them seem to be determined to target them father and son. Siege was even worried that something might happen to his mother. But he lost the signal as soon as he arrived here, so he could only focus on the present and hope to end the battle here as soon as possible. If Jiang Tunnen was there should be no need to worry about their safety. Thinking of this, Siege couldn't help but feel relieved. Since Jiang Tunnen will come here, it must be arranged elsewhere. The trust of knowing each other for many years made Siege feel very relieved. Even if the enemy was not sure what kind of enemy it was, Siege could keep calm and dare to fight freely, because he knew that Jiang Tunnen would help. Thinking of this, Siege suddenly turned around and asked a few people to go with him to take a look at the details of the other side. The situation on the other side was completely different from what Siege expected. They looked like incompletely evolved Zerg, with dark eyes, which looked much more terrifying than the real Zerg. The wings of this group of unidentified creatures were also wrong. They were mostly dark, like the wings of the 4-in-1 creature that Lang Qichu had studied on the planet a long time ago. They were so big that they drooped to the ground. The teammates around them stepped on them, but there was no reaction. Siege took out a flare and threw it into the group of 4-in-1 creatures without hesitation. No one responded to this. They seemed to be controlled by their minds, and just walked forward aimlessly. Siege squinted at them, and gave Lu Qi a look. Taking out the fireball that had been prepared long ago from his pocket, Lu Qi threw it among them. The fireball was specially made by them on the barren planet, according to Jiang Tunnen instructions. The middle was filled with oil. The current sparks looked small, but they could not be extinguished. Soon, the flames would rise to the sky. The group of things finally reacted, as if they were smoked by the steaming hot air, choking and coughing and making a hissing sound. They were not like Zerg, but even less like humans. Things became more and more strange. Siege observed for a while, and found that this group of things were afraid of fire. He decisively led the team to evacuate, and planned to use fire to attack first. The geographical location occupied by this group of unknown creatures is really subtle. It is a planet located between the Zerg, the Empire, and the Federation. It is usually guarded by the Empire and the Federation. When Xiaosha received the news, the Imperial army stationed here was unprepared, and none of them returned unscathed. Although there are no residents on the nearby planets, they cannot be handed over to the Zerg. When Siege came, he immediately became a vanguard to investigate. It's definitely not the Zerg, Siege confirmed. Did you monitor the location of the Cebu Xiang afterwards? Where did it go after Lang Qichu died? Lu Qi really knew. She quickly reported, at first, it never moved. And then it should be someone from Lang Qichu who faked the planetary explosion. And the Cebu Xiang also disappeared. Later, its movements were not monitored. And coupled with the recent crackdown on illegal laboratories, it is likely that it is dead. When they saw the huge Cebu Xiang with low intelligence, they all knew that it would not live long. This is the case with modified animals. Strong abilities are gained at the cost of sacrificing lives. Siege nodded, looking at the flames and smoke on the opposite side, thinking about the next countermeasures. It was clearly a fortress guarded by 3 races, but no one from the Federation came. Either they had not received the news, or something more serious had happened, or the worst result was that the group of unknown creatures on the opposite side were the product of the Federation. Chapter 107. Siege didn't have much time to think carefully, because he found that the group of unknown creatures on the opposite side were angered by their actions, and seemed to be ready to rush over at any time, and had entered a state of preparation for war. The burnt unknown creatures were not in good condition, and it seemed that something was missing from their bodies and faces. Their wings were still emitting thick smoke, but it was the only intact part of their bodies. These things are so strange, Lucci pondered. Since fire doesn't work very well, let me try to attack first. CSG didn't stop her, but nodded in agreement. Okay, I go with you. He explained a few words to the back, and regardless of everyone's obstruction, he followed Lucci without hesitation to explore the unknown creatures again. The two divided the work and cooperated, and Lucci performed the white knife in and the red knife out on the spot. This trick really worked. Deep red blood flowed out of their bodies, and they really fell down. They all breathed a sigh of relief. As long as they could kill them, there would be no big problem. Siege thought of a countermeasure in his mind, and asked the few people who came with him to evacuate temporarily. But he didn't notice that a bigger guy came behind him. They killed and retreated at the same time. The light was not good, so no one noticed the abnormality around them. At the end of the group of unknown creatures, a thing that was crawling on the ground suddenly began to move, opened its huge mouth, or it couldn't be called a mouth, and swallowed all the monsters in front of it without hesitation. And its body became even bigger. It didn't mean to stop swallowing, but became more and more arrogant. From one bite to several bites. The sword in Lucci's hand became restless and agitated. She didn't know why. She raised the sword with one hand, and noticed the clue from the reflection of the sword. The black irregular giant had become very large and was crawling, as if watching their every move. Seeing this scene, Lucci shuddered. She made a quick decision, and seeing that Siege and his men were about to break out of the siege, she turned back without hesitation and went to meet the giant. The first person to notice something was wrong was Siege. He was about to ask Lucci to evacuate, but he found that she was nowhere to be seen. Instead, the black beast was particularly arrogant and bared its teeth and claws at them. Siege was stunned and said, "You go back and report the situation first. We will be back later." Everyone saw the thing and rejected Siege's arrangement. But Siege was determined and said in a strong tone, "I am not discussing this with you, but notifying you." After saying that, he disappeared in front of them at a speed that even the superpowers could not catch up with, and ran towards the black beast. Siege actually had no idea what this thing was. He just felt impatient. Why did Chi Lao and his group have to come up with so many weird things? As a lamb whose memory had been revived, Siege weighed the size of the monster opposite, and simply returned to his original form, and decided to eat the monster. Siege's real prototype is much bigger than the little black sheep. A one-horned curly-haired giant beast suddenly appeared, with two big wings behind it. The whole outline alone looked like an extremely ferocious beast. The group of monsters that could not be burned by fire began to get restless. Siege did not walk, but directly spread his wings and flew to a nearby place, pulling Lucci out of the sea of corpses and blood. How can you say that you can't follow the rules and leave the team alone? After being on the deserted planet for a long time, everyone has become free and undisciplined, Siege said sternly. Lucci saluted Siege, did not refute him, but protested with silence. Now is not the time to talk about this. Siege's golden eyes moved, looked back, and threw Lucci far away without hesitation. Leave this to me. You go and prepare to meet Nan Nan. After such an unclear sentence came out, Lucci was indeed much more excited than before, and responded neatly, without Siege saying anything, leaving him with only his back. Siege was almost laughing with anger. They had only known each other for a few months, but their words were more effective than those of his former comrade-in-arms. The strange animals were only terrified by Siege, the sudden giant. They involuntarily made way for Siege, just like Moses parting the sea. The scene was extremely harmonious. Siege didn't care either. He directly faced the thing that had swallowed many of his companions. His pair of golden eyes seemed to see through its soul. Unfortunately, it was unknown what material this thing was made of. Siege gently flapped his wings and set off a huge storm. But the thing was as stable as Mount Tai. The huge black sheep opened its mouth, and its golden eyes became the only bright color in the darkness. Unfortunately, this trick was useless. The other party obviously turned a blind eye to Siege's intimidation. Siege bit off half of the monster's body in one bite. He was shocked by its jelly-like taste, and instantly spit out the foreign object in his mouth. The black beast became much smaller because of Siege's behavior. But what surprised Siege was that this thing quickly turned into two, devouring their companions separately. Xiaozhi pushed the part he bit off into the mouth of the other part, but was thrown aside in disgust. It seemed that this thing had no IQ, but for some reason refused to devour itself. Xiaozhi guessed that the focus should be on him. The huge sheep disappeared from the darkness, and the figure of Qin Jun carrying a long knife appeared again, with a cold light flashing on the knife, and stabbed into the belly of the beast without hesitation. It looked at Xiaozhi in disbelief, and the movement stopped. Xiaozhi saw countless blacks overflowing from its body, and soon merged with the air. This was not the weapon Xiaozhi used before, but he had smeared a layer of Suizhu powder on it. The resentment of Suizhu and the tree spirit could not devour each other, and the dark matter given by the tree spirit would also protect Suizhu. Xiaozhi originally just wanted to try it, but he didn't expect it to be quite useful, knowing that this method can quickly solve this group of monsters. Xiaozhi looked at the other one, intending to let it eat its companion first, and then he would take action. The most urgent task should be to find the culprit who released this group of strange things. Xiaozhi held the knife and stopped looking at the group of strange things, but continued to move forward. After walking for an unknown period of time, Xiaozhi suddenly heard the sound of dripping water. He looked at the source of the sound vigilantly, and suddenly found that he seemed to have entered a place he shouldn't have entered. Qi Lao and Jiang Tunan were also watching this scene. He laughed out loud. Xie Zhao's son is really sharp, but it seems to be useless. After all, this is my territory. Jiang Tunan stared at Xiaozhi closely, and finally couldn't sit still when he saw him actually walk into the mouth of the black giant beast. Tunan, since you are so smart, why don't you guess whether I know the true identity of this kid Xiaozhi? Qi Lao spoke to stop Jiang Tunan. Jiang Tunan took out a fan from his waist and fanned it a few times, taking a deep breath and saying, "Then guess what you saw. Mr. Qi, can we broadcast it to others?" The two of them held each other in check, while Jinsong sat aside and ate melon seeds, firmly implementing the code of conduct of interstellar pirates. When they met such a force, they chose to eat melons. Jiang Tunan didn't have much patience to continue to talk back to Mr. Qi, so he raised his hand slightly, tied up Mr. Qi tightly, and took him out together. The people on this starship were all Mr. Qi's confidants. Seeing Jiang Tunan treat Mr. Qi like this, they pointed their weapons at her. Jiang Tunan said impatiently, "You should think it over. It's not me who is hurt, but him." Mr. Qi smiled and said, "I am old and don't want to live anymore. But you still have a bright future. Of course, I don't want to let a talent like you die like this." Jiang Tunan rolled his eyes, and used the vines to tie Jinsong up together. Jinsong, who was still eating melon seeds, didn't understand why and didn't struggle. He just asked, "Why are you grabbing me?" It wasn't until Jiang Tunan easily carried the two men to the side of the aircraft and motioned Jinsong to enter the cockpit that he realized that Jiang Tunan was not old enough to fly the aircraft. Jinsong suppressed his laughter, glanced at old Qi, and casually said, "Do you want to take this old man with you? Will he be a burden?" Jiang Tunan originally didn't plan to take him with her. She raised her hand slightly, and old Qi was suspended in the air. The sturdy vine cage was airtight, whether others wanted to open it or old Qi wanted to get out. It was not easy. Qi Lao's men watched him being hung in the air, thinking that this action was not very harmful, but extremely insulting, and their faces were even uglier. A group of people aimed at Jiang Tunan, as if they were guarding her tightly. Jiang Tunan didn't intend to let them feel at ease, and emphasized, "You must think clearly. If you use force, it is guaranteed that only Mr. Qi will be injured. This group of people can no longer be called simple human beings. Many of them, like Mr. Qi, have been transformed. Even if they have thousands of methods, they can only choose to bow their heads in front of a tough guy like Jiang Tunan. I hope that when I come back, Mr. Qi and my teammates will be intact." Jiang Tunan finally said one sentence and closed the door of the aircraft. Seeing her sitting down, Jinsong said, "I have already told my accomplices that if I want to go out alone, let them evacuate first. But thank you for your concern. This is the first time someone cares about our lives." Jiang Tunan glanced at him and said nothing. He just picked up the fan in his hand and played with it. From time to time, he looked up at the black beast in the distance that blocked all light, and said, "You will meet outside later. I can go in by myself." Jinsong would naturally not agree. Jiang Tunan is Lu Qi's little sister, and she is still a minor. There is no reason to send her alone to face danger. If we all go in, what if Lu Qi comes and can't find anyone? Jiang Tunin guessed Xie's arrangement and bluntly rejected Jin Song's idea. Jin Song also knew Jiang Tunin's strength, but he still felt that even if an underage girl was capable, she might not be as adaptable as a veteran like him when she entered an unfamiliar space. Seeing that Jiang Tunin was really insistent, he simply gave her all the life-saving things in his hand. Chapter 108. Although Jiang Tunin didn't need these, he still didn't refuse Jin Song kindness, and walked into the darkness with a pocket full of secret treasures. Suizhu emitted a soft light in the darkness, leading Jiang Tunin forward. After slowly spreading his mental power, Jiang Tunin realized that they should be in the mouth of some strange creature cultivated by old Qi. Jiang Tunin could feel its heartbeat and restless emotions. Most likely, Xie did something to make this monster uneasy. It wasn't too bad to be able to sense Xie's position. Jiang Tunin followed the vague guidance and went over. When the faint light appeared in front of Xie, he was even stunned for a moment. How did you get in? The long knife in Xie's hand was still dripping with blood. It was not quite accurate to say that it was blood. To be precise, it was a ball of black mist, a bit like the dark matter that the tree spirit could release. Jiang Tunin approached him and smiled. You are here? Of course I can't run away. Giving all the life-saving magic weapons in his hand to Xie. Jiang Tunin looked at this place carefully, listening carefully to the heartbeat of this monster, trying to find a breakthrough. Lu Qi had never expected that Xie would lose contact like this. She originally planned to go back for help, but she realized halfway that this might be Xie's trick. But Lu Qi calmed down, first reported the general situation to Xie, and by the way proposed to meet Xie's request. Xie heard her request, looked up at Lu Qi, and wondered, this is not the first time he has gone on a mission by himself. Although everything is unknown this time, according to his ability, he should be able to come back alive. Probably because he looks like a leader, too deeply rooted in people's hearts. Lu Qi said deeply. The actual reason is that Jiang Tunin and Xie have a good relationship. Since Jiang Tunin came, he will definitely not leave Xie alone. And 9 out of 10 will also get in. She was only a little worried about Xie's life and death. But Jiang Tunin was different. Seeing her firm attitude, Xie waved his hand and agreed to Lu Qi's request. There is no manpower available now. If you go, it's okay for you to go alone. Right? Lu Qi nodded, and she left in a hurry after Xie's approval. If she looked back, she could see that Xie, who was always calm and steady, had his trembling fingers held by his other hand. Xie was his only child. If possible, Xie did not want Xie to live such a life of blood on the edge of a knife. But the interstellar era is full of dangers. Instead of pinning your hopes on others, you might as well choose to take the initiative. So even if Xie had some problems with his bloodline, Xie still agreed to let him become a member of the Guardian Empire. But the premise before was that the biggest conflict with them was the Zerg, not those strange things. Xie had seen the battle videos of everyone on the barren planet, and had also obtained the data of those modified experimental subjects. It was much more difficult for a mortal to successfully defeat them than to fight the Zerg. Moreover, Xie knew Xie's character. If he hadn't judged it to be extremely dangerous, he would never let the team return and go into danger alone. Xie lowered his eyes and looked at the diagram in his hand, hoping that Xie could come back alive. Lu Qi met Jin Song, who was circling around the monster on the road. They were both a little surprised to see each other. Why are you here? This is a war zone, not a place for you to come, Lu Qi said firmly. Jin Song smiled and pointed to the shapeless behemoth beside him. Nan and I came together. We have a mission and have to come. Looking in the direction of Jin Song's hand, Lu Qi was silent for a moment. You know Xie went in. In fact, she also knew it in her heart. Seeing Xie go in, Jiang Tunin would never sit and wait for death. If any person or animal on the deserted planet went in for adventure, Jiang Tunin would go with him without hesitation. The two stared at each other for a moment, and had to patrol together tacitly, doing their best to eliminate all possible risks outside. Just as their aircraft left, a black and white figure appeared at the entrance. To humans, it was a huge monster, but for the monster in front of it that blended into the background, this little thing was not enough to fill the gap between their teeth. Is it here? I found it according to the map given by Grandpa Black Turtle. So it shouldn't be wrong. Right? Jingjing looked around and was eager to try. It can't be wrong. This thing is its mouth. You can see a lot of water coming out of it. Tada leaned on Jingjing's head, completely different from his usual timid appearance. Jingjing was not a hesitant character. Hearing what Tada said, he immediately said, "It's time for our Octonauts to show their prowess." Tada also said, "Go for it." But this courage was not until they entered the dark cave. It disappeared when it was about 15 minutes old. Tada had lived on the deserted planet for a long time, so he was in such a silent environment. "Jingjing, do you think it will just shut up, and we won't be able to get out?" Jingjing opened his mouth wide, swallowing the water vapor in front of him, and took the time to answer Tada's question. "Of course not. I will soon grow bigger than it." Tada was a little unconvinced. He sat on Jingjing, but found that his vision range was getting higher and higher, as if he was about to touch the upper jaw of this monster. "What's going on? Why are you getting bigger?" Tada asked in surprise. "This monster is delicious. When we meet Nan, can she help me catch more and take them home?" Jingjing took a deep breath and sighed. Hearing this, Tada also opened his mouth and bit around, but only bit the air. It wondered, "But there's nothing here?" Jingjing swung his tail, took another big bite, and smacked his lips and said, "Maybe it's because our diets are different? But it doesn't matter. You just need to sit on me." They were just ordered to do it in a critical moment, because Du Liang went back and studied the location of Jiang Tunan with Du Chen, and gave the most accurate judgment. Jingjing is not an ordinary killer whale. It was raised by the black turtle with strange black fog, and it was because the planet they originally lived on was eaten bald by Jingjing that they thought of sending it out. The black turtle didn't speak at first because it considered that Jingjing's diet was too scary. If Jiang Tunan heard it, he might have to consider it, so it concealed this fact. And after seeing the video released by Du Liang, it immediately announced the truth. Du Liang thought, "No wonder when I went there again later, I found that other killer whales had grown up a lot, and Jingjing was still a baby on the deserted planet. It seems that he was malnourished." The black turtle nodded embarrassedly, accepting Du Liang's guess. Having said that, Du Liang thought about Jingjing's fighting power and decided to let the child go out for a good meal. Usually, Fu and Leopard go out, but they are just ordinary babies after all, and they don't have such a magical diet. Although Jingjing doesn't live with everyone, he is not completely out of contact with them. He has also heard that Leopard and Fu often go out hunting. As a beast, Jingjing has been eager to try. Hearing Du Liang's invitation, he agreed without saying a word and proposed to take Tada with him. Tada is a little otter with a full luck value and an excellent sense of direction. Jingjing has never been out before, and although Tada has never been out either, everyone agrees that Tada is unexpectedly reliable. Du Liang finally agreed to this request, explained a lot of precautions to the two cubs, and finally let them go. Looking at their backs, Chewie nodded and said, "That's it. The children will grow up, and you can't watch them forever." Chewie helped solve the problem, and even brought out the school flag that was left unattended on the field and gave it to Guanxi. Guanxi didn't expect such a big surprise and handed the thing over to Wanishao. Wanishao fought with him for 300 rounds and finally chose to keep the school flag as a collection. After all, it was not picked up by someone in their team. It would be unfair to hand it over to the organizing committee at this time. But it must be said that the thrilling degree of this game is probably unforgettable for Wanishao in this life, and it will be written on the epitaph after death. She and Guanxi sat together, looking at the planet that had returned to peace, and sighed together. Everything seemed to be normal. But in fact, they knew in their hearts that as long as the people of the Third Legion did not retreat, it meant that the crisis had not been resolved. Guanxi was shocked by old Qi, and she didn't know what her grandfather and Du Liang talked about. She only knew that Du Liang was alone when they came out. She wanted to ask, but in the end, she couldn't say a word. Grandpa's behavior is wrong. Is he really considering humanity? Or is he doing it for his own selfish reasons? Guanxi didn't dare to think about it. Nor did she dare to call her family. She was already taciturn. And after this incident, she became even more silent. The only people who knew her here were Wanishao and Su Qingwei. Su Qingwei didn't talk much either. Only Wanishao was responsible for easing the suffocating silence. They followed Interstellar news every day. Guanxi was also dragged by Wanishao to get close to the people of the Third Legion, trying to get some information from them. For example, Ming Desi had been pestered by Wanishao for several days, and he really revealed a lot of information to them. Jiang Tunan has been gone on the planet for a long time. I don't know what she is doing. Letting everyone stay is to protect your safety. Don't think too much. You all know about the Legion. How could it harm everyone? In response, Wang Xiao didn't believe a word Meng Dezi said, but still pestered him every day. Guanqi was a little confused. And Wang Xiao showed a mysterious smile. Of course, it's to repeat the question. If you ask a question several times, there will always be an answer that is true. Even if we use the process of elimination, we can piece together a truth over time. Guanqi was impressed by Wang Xiao's wisdom. As Wang Xiao said, they really gradually got the closest possibility to the truth from Mendez. Everything on the field was planned by Qi Lao. And the people of the Third Army were also transferred by Qi Lao. Just because Jiang Tunan shined and seriously disrupted their plan. Only then did Qi Lao realize that Jiang Tunan was a disaster. And immediately decided to eliminate her. But he didn't expect it to be so unsuccessful. Lang Qichu resurrection. To be precise, he was not dead in a sense. And everyone misjudged it. But even Qi Lao only had one chance to help him. Resurrect. And now he is really dead. As for Qi Lao and Jiang Tunan, they should be going to the final battle. Guanqi and Wang Xiao looked at the integrated information in front of them. Looked at each other. And sighed heavily. Their friends were fighting outside. And they could only stay behind. They were not even behind. But just ordinary people who could not eat melons. I say, you don't have to blame yourself too much. Life is made up of countless accidents. Wang Xiao poked Guanqi's face and comforted him carelessly. After all, you didn't accomplish anything before. And you also disrupted Mr. Qi's plan to a certain extent. She was talking about the fact that Guanqi was sent to protect Jiang Tunan and look for Xia Shi traces after Jiang Tunan arrived at the deserted planet. Now that I think about it, Mr. Qi must have used her at that time. It would be better if I didn't say this. Guanqi stood up and said firmly, I want to find him and ask him clearly. I can't wait until he is gone and leave this mystery in my heart. Wang Xiao nodded and said seriously, I understand. It's like a lump in your throat. Right? I don't know what he thought of. Guanqi took a deep breath and walked out with his head held high. They were stopped by Mendez's men again and were still forbidden to go out. However, that night, their reinforcements came. Siwen got the news about Du Liang and finally remembered that there was a niece left here. So he troubled Siwen to pick her up. Wang Xiao almost didn't think about it and directly refused to leave with them. You go first. I don't have anything urgent. I'm here to take care of my classmates. After all, no one has left. It's not appropriate for us to leave. Guanqi was also stunned by these words. She was obviously hesitant. But Wang Xiao pointed it out. You go first. I will protect everyone. They all knew that if Guanqi didn't take this trip, he might never get the truth in this life. Siwen was not a talkative person. He took Guanqi and rushed at the speed of their Zerg to reach the destination. In the endless darkness, a faint white flashed in the dark cage, and there were two groups of people confronting each other around. But no one could get close to the cage. Guanqi looked down and found that one of them was his grandfather's personal guards. So it was obvious who was locked in the cage. This simple but effective method. Guanqi only knew one person who did this. While she was hesitating, Siwen had already brought her to the cage. And she and Qi Lao looked at each other in surprise. Guanqi, why are you here? Qi Lao's eyes flashed with surprise. He originally planned to keep Guanqi in the arena, so that he would not have to see his grandfather, whom he admired the most since childhood. Like a lost dog, Guanqi's eyes were erratic, and his lips were trembling. I don't know what kind of intense psychological struggle he went through, but he still mustered up the courage to look directly at Qi Lao. Grandpa, have you used me for so many years? Qi Lao was asked by Guanqi's confusing question. He didn't think that his granddaughter took so much effort to come here just to ask such a seemingly stupid question. But Qi Lao also knew that the reason why he liked this granddaughter was because she had a sincere heart. What do you think? Old Qi threw the question back and looked carefully at Guanqi in front of him. She was a little embarrassed. Very different from the pampered look at home before. But her eyes still flickered with flames, as if to ignite the endless darkness. I don't know. Guanqi lowered her eyelashes. According to my understanding, I never thought you would do such a thing. But think about it carefully. There are actually clues. I overlooked it. For example, the pictures of animals that appear from time to time at home, and the inexplicable extra ingredients at home. Now think about it. It is very likely that they are all animals that old Qi has processed. Just take them home to add to their meals. Thinking of this, Guanqi felt a little nauseous. Chi-Chi, I think that letting you go to the 4th Legion for training is not a use. Because Sieshi's strength is the strongest among the several legions. And it is not because I want to harm him. But I did find him through your few words. Guanxi took a deep breath, stimulated by the frank and cruel answer of Mr. Qi, and finally chose to remain silent. She wanted to say something, but suddenly heard a commotion behind her. Lu Qi's voice sounded, and it was rare to hide a bit of panic. Guanxi, get out of there! Before Guanxi could react, Siwen, who came out of nowhere, dragged her away, and muttered, humans are really fragile and troublesome species. Without giving Guanxi a chance to refute, the place where the vines were located was full of flames. Guanxi's eyes were bloodshot. She thought that no matter how serious Mr. Qi's crimes were, they should be judged by humans. That's not the case. Siwen's soft but cruel voice sounded. He hurt so many innocent lives. No matter who it is, they are qualified to deal with him. Guanxi wanted to refute, but suddenly found that he had no way to refute. Because Siwen was right. Grandpa had done many bad things, hurting many animals and humans. She had seen humans suffering because of transformation. But she could not ignore the animals who were also suffering. Humans can speak for themselves. But what about animals? Humans can punish him with their rules. But the Zerg cannot. Siwen looked at Guanxi's reaction and was a little surprised. I didn't expect you to have such a sense of justice. Even if it was your grandfather, you could stand on the side of justice. Guanxi shook his head and used his supernatural power to try to enclose the area where the flames were soaring into the sky, so as to prevent innocent people from being burned. Siwen handed Guanxi to Lu Qi, and the two of them exchanged a few words before leaving the scene. Guanxi didn't care about what they said, but just stared at the flames in the distance and asked, does he still have a chance to survive? When they got closer, they found the culprits, who turned out to be 3 raccoons, carrying guns and cannons, with red eyes, and throwing things in their hands to the cage as if they were free. It was not until Lu Qi and the others approached that the 3 of them were visibly better. And the first sentence they said was, Erxia is dead. Lu Qi and Guanxi were stunned. It turned out that Erxia's guesses at that time were all true. But they did not choose to believe, which led to the current tragedy. Erxia felt very guilty, and coupled with Lang Qichu's previous crazy counterattack, Erxia could not bear it and blew himself up. Why Lang Qichu appeared in the arena? The reason is already obvious. It was arranged by Old Qi. And if there was no Old Qi, the initial transformation plan would not have existed at all. Guanxi showed a guilty expression and murmured, I'm sorry. I didn't know. It's not your fault. Yichuan glanced at Guanxi, and then looked at the fire not far away again. We were transformed at the beginning, and it was not your courage. It has nothing to do with you to get to this point. When Old Qi got the dark matter and started the experiment, Guanxi was not born yet. If I had noticed those details earlier, even if I couldn't stop him, at least I could have reduced the number of casualties and transformed creatures. Guanxi felt like she was stuck in a dead end. When she thought of the 3 raccoons in front of her, she felt extremely guilty because of the harm done to her grandfather. Lu Qi patted her shoulder and said coldly, Guanxi, I hope you understand that it is meaningless to say these things now, and it will only cause more serious harm to them. Guanxi was stunned for a moment, nodded and said, sorry. I was thinking wrong. I don't know if he is now. He will be fine. Jin Sung popped his head out, glanced at the fire in the distance, and said with a smile, don't you know Jiang Tinan ability? She will definitely choose to make your grandfather live and die, and cut his flesh with a blunt knife, instead of letting him leave so easily. Everyone fell into a strange silence, and Qi Lao's personal guards suddenly appeared, all with wounds on their bodies, with the tips of their knives and guns pointed at them. Put down your weapons and surrender. This is your only chance to choose, the leader of the guard said. Jin Song reacted quickly and grabbed Guanxi directly. See, this is our hostage. Your old man Qi's granddaughter Guanxi. You don't know her, right? Lu Qi glanced at Jin Song speechlessly. Guanxi was quite cooperative, just standing there blankly. Really looked a bit hostage. How could the guards not know Guanxi? After a brief silence, they chose to stay where they were and continued to confront them. Some people behind glanced at the 3 raccoons, obviously a little surprised. Why there are such strange things here? Sanshio smiled, which looked particularly weird on his furry face. My brother just died. You better not mess with me. Otherwise you can accompany your master to continue to be bodyguards. He held the gun in a standard posture, and the guards did not dare to act rashly just for this reason, but looked at Guan Qi in embarrassment. You should leave here first. This is a private matter between Grandpa and him. Guan Qi choked up for a moment, but still said calmly, everyone should be responsible for their own actions. Since he has done these things, he should have thought about the current outcome a long time ago. The guards did not expect Guan Qi to say such cruel words, and they looked at each other in bewilderment. Seeing that Sancho was about to take action, they hesitated, and remembered that Sancho had fired without saying a word not long ago, and stepped back slightly. They glanced at the still burning flames and whispered, then we will go to put out the fire first. You can do whatever you want. Chapter 109. There are many talented people in Qi Lao's personal guards. For them, putting out a fire is very simple. Soon, the fire that ignited a dark area calmed down, revealing the original appearance of the vine cage. Even with such a big fire, it was not damaged at all, and it was still the same as before. But Qi Lao inside was in trouble. Through the gap, you can see that his original white clothes have been smoked to gray. He coughed and was obviously choked by the smoke. TSK. It's a pity, Sancho said without hesitation. But it would be a pity if such a person died easily. Guan Qi lowered his eyes, pretending not to hear the dangerous speech around him. Jiang Tunan, who entered the monster's belly, felt something wrong the moment the fire started. Fortunately, she recovered her original strength, and this little heat was nothing to her. Xieji sensed her abnormality, reached out and touched her arm, and asked in confusion, what's wrong? Jiang Tunan looked outside, shook his head, and smiled. Maybe someone can't wait to take action. Compared to them, you should pay more attention to yourself. Xieji is really not in good condition now. It's too humid inside. Xieji is a curly-haired lamb, and he doesn't like this humid climate the most. Now he looks like a poor dog in the water. Hearing what Jiang Tunan said, Xieji's golden eyes looked over, and he really looked a bit pitiful like an innocent puppy. A violent vibration came, and Jiang Tunan stretched out his hand to block Xieji behind him, looking at the entrance vigilantly. Nanan, we are here to save you. The shouting came over, and Jiang Tunan listened carefully, only to find that it was his own child who came, and the expression on his face suddenly relaxed. Who is it this time? Xieji smoothed his hair. He really didn't like this humid space, and the group of cubs on the deserted planet should be the same. A shadow slowly floated over from afar. Xieji looked at it for a few more times, and found that it was Jingjing. Wow, Jingjing has grown a lot. Xieji praised without thinking. Jiang Tunan waved his hands at them, and asked happily, why are you here? But we can't find a place to go out. Jingjing flicked his tail, and was even happier. I have thought of a way. Even if we can't get in here, as long as we suck it dry, it will only have a layer of skin left. Jiang Tunan originally planned to find the heart of this monster and pierce it. He didn't expect Jingjing to be so powerful. It was also at this moment that Jiang Tunan suddenly realized that although he was Jingjing's breeder, Huangxing really didn't feed this huge creature much. So you are not an ordinary killer whale. Jiang Tunan was shocked. Jingjing tilted her head and blinked in confusion. If I'm not a killer whale, what else can I be? Don't I look exactly like my good friends? Jiang Tunan couldn't refute it. It was obvious that Jingjing didn't know what she was. This mystery needed to be solved by the black turtle himself. She stopped asking, and was thrown onto Jingjing's back with Xieji. Tada greeted shyly, got into Jiang Tunan's arms, and told her about their experiences along the way. Jiang Tunan was even more excited, holding the wet Tada in her arms. She said with emotion, thank you for saving us. Jiang Tunan worked harder when she was moved. She continued to search for the monster's heart with her mental power, but found that it was much clearer than the previous foggy one. It was probably because Jingjing's method worked and swallowed up a lot of energy from the monster. In a vast ocean, the monster's heart was like a small boat, floating in it. Found it. Jiang Tunan directly controlled the vines to wrap around it, and the monster suddenly began to struggle, which meant that she had found the right one. Don't worry. Don't worry, Jingjing hurriedly said. Let's get closer to the exit before we act. I'm not full yet. This was the first time that Jiang Tunan saw a real whale swallowing. The black fog in front of him was not dispersed by them, but was sucked into Jingjing's mouthfuls of wind and disappeared. It's hard to describe the feeling of seeing this shocking scene. Jiang Tunan has been planning to lend Jingjing to the tree spirit temporarily after he gets out. After all, he has suffered from the gray fog for a long time. If there was a divine beast like Jingjing back then, he would not be deceived by humans and have nothing left. In the wind created by Jingjing, they actually kept spinning in place. The reason why Jiang Tunnen was able to discover this was because he felt that the position of the monster's heart had never changed. This won't work. Let's demolish it violently. Jiang Tunnen sighed. This monster was like an ocean. If he just fought with it like this, Jingjing might be the only one alive in the end. Thinking of this, Jiang Tunnen moved his hands. The vines crushed the things wrapped without hesitation. And the heart that was originally beating rhythmically suddenly stopped. And tiny blood gushed out. And was tied up by the vines that came later without hesitation to prevent it from gushing out. There was a violent vibration. And Jiang Tunnen even heard its cry of pain in a trance. A black giant that was comparable to a small planet suddenly roamed in the interstellar space. It was close to darkness. And no one noticed its existence even though it was swinging its body back and forth with such a big movement. The two people and two beasts in the monster's body did not give up on survival. Jiang Tunnen used vines to look for an exit. But unfortunately they were like being trapped in a wasteland. And it seemed that there was no way out. Jingjing could devour the energy in its body, but could not kill it directly. Xieji looked around, and his golden eyes flashed. And he returned to the appearance of a lamb again. It was not quite accurate to say that it was a lamb, because the body of this lamb was actually bigger than Jingjing. It was just that all the hair was stuck together, like a mop with eyes. Jiang Tunnen almost laughed at the description he thought of, and tried his best to control the corners of his mouth that were raised. Xieji glanced at her and said in a deep voice, "Laugh if you want to. After all, you don't have much chance to see me in such a mess." The horn on Xieji's head flashed with stars of light. He raised his front paw, and the horn turned into a sword. Jingjing and Tada exclaimed so cool at the same time. Jiang Tunnen caught the falling sword accurately, and a trace of nostalgia flashed across his face. The pattern on the hilt is the totem of the Xieji clan. This sword made of Xieji bones is extremely powerful. The reason why it was not taken out before was not because Xieji was reluctant to give it up. It was wrapped in the gray fog around it. As a divine beast born from the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, Xieji energy was suppressed, and it could not be taken out at all. If Jingjing hadn't come, they didn't know how much effort it would take to successfully control the continued growth of this thing. Jiang Tunnen's eyes changed after she got the sword. She flew up from Jingjing's back, made a beautiful sword flower, and stared at one place without hesitation. As the sword rose, a bright light suddenly appeared in front of them, like the sun appeared in the chaos. "Success? Success? Can we go out?" Jingjing burped and asked Xieji on his back. Xieji shook his fur uncomfortably and said casually, "It should be. I believe in Nanan's strength." The crack became bigger and bigger, revealing the sky outside. Jiang Tunnen took the sword that could open the world and danced around. Countless cracks came into being, and more white. Wow! Jingjing's sigh had not yet come out, and suddenly found that they seemed to be about to land in a place where they should not be. The two people and two beasts fell down, looking at the swords and shadows below, and they all took a breath of cold air. They were clearly at the junction of three countries. How did they suddenly appear in the Zerg? A bunch of Zergs below looked up at them, obviously ready to catch the turtle in the jar. Jiang Tunnen quickly began to weave a cage to cover them. Xieji had regained his human form at some point, and the Zergs saw him and were obviously agitated, wishing to tear him apart. "I wonder if our savior Siwen is in the Zerg," Jiang Tunnen said calmly. "If we follow his schedule, he shouldn't be here now," Xieji said calmly. "After all, he said Jingjing and Tada here." Jiang Tunnen showed a peaceful expression. "Ah, then let's lie down." Before they landed, they were already trapped by the Zerg with tools, giving them no chance to resist or explain. This was a group of low-level Zergs, and they were only good at following the orders issued by the high-level Zergs, such as killing Xieji without mercy. There was no reason to talk to them, and in order to protect the two cubs, Jiang Tunnen could only shrink them and put them in his pocket. Their fighting power is obviously not as good as some cats and dogs on the deserted planet. They are fragile little treasures at this time. Jiang Tunnen swung a sword, and a large number of low-level Zergs on the opposite side fell down. I have to say, this feeling of being protected is very good. Xieji has a good adaptability, and losing his horn does not seem to hurt him. Jiang Tunnen knew that this was not the case. After quickly killing the low-level Zergs around him, Jiang Tunnen slapped the sword back into Xieji's body. The listless lamb's golden eyes finally showed a little brilliance, and he looked at Jiang Tunan steadily. After dealing with the Zergs that besieged them, the group hesitated about how to get out. The Zergs could not send signals to humans, and they did not know how to contact Chui or Siwen, and they could not even determine their own positions, so they could only let Tada walk around according to their intuition. Unexpectedly, this trick was so effective. Soon, a white roof appeared in front of them. "This is Siwen's home," Jiang Tunan said affirmatively. "We are saved." Chui, who was thousands of miles away, sensed Jiang Tunan's presence and quickly notified Wu Fang, who was closest to the Zerg. But Wu Fang had no time to deal with it. He looked at the federal army in front of him with a headache and waved his hand. "Little guys, charge them." Siwen was still watching the excitement and waiting for Jiang Tunan to appear. But he didn't expect that the other party gave him such a big surprise and actually flashed to the Zerg territory. When he returned to the Zerg, Siwen saw the two people climbed over the wall into his house and entertained the two animals like a host. "Siwen, I really will thank you." The rapidity of the subsequent development of things was a bit beyond Jiang Tunan's imagination. Siwen's arrival did not successfully stop the Zerg from encircling and suppressing Xieji, and even Siwen was labeled a traitor. They were surrounded by the Zerg, and Jiang Tunan said speechlessly, "It seems that your status in the Zerg is not very high. Otherwise you wouldn't have no weight when you speak." Siwen did not refute, but said faintly, "Now it's good. I am neither a human nor a bug, and I won't even have a place to stay in the future." That being said, Siwen quickly opened his spiritual field and tried to control all the bugs present, but failed. Jiang Tunan raised her hand tremblingly. "You may not believe it, but this matter may have something to do with me." Jiang Tunan's ability is obvious to all. As the only remaining, resurrected, and only two suspected gods in the world, she has a variety of abilities, the biggest of which should be purification. It's not quite accurate to say purification. After all, they all fell into the resentment of Qi Lao. Without Jingjing's help, I don't know how long it would take to escape successfully. But on the weak Zerg, this ability is a bit conspicuous. Siwen's control ability is fine. Jiang Tunan can feel the pressure he exudes. But the bad thing is that she can purify this power. Siwen took a breath and showed a rare look of confusion. "What should I do now? What else can I do?" "Of course. Run." Jiang Tunan dragged one with each hand, and tried to break through the siege without hesitation before more and more Zergs reacted. When he wanted to throw out the life-saving weapon given by Jin Sung, his hand slipped. Xie, who had not recovered yet, had no time to show an expression of disbelief, and was thrown into the Zerg pile by Jiang Tunan. "Ah, I never thought it would unfold in such a funny way." Siwen uttered a single syllable from his throat, looked at Jiang Tunan, who was also a little confused, and said speechlessly, "The biggest undercover agent is not you, right? What's more embarrassing is that they are only one step away from leaving the planet." It was Xie Xiao himself who came to meet them outside, just watching his big son being thrown back to the Zerg by a slip of his hand. His expression was a little cracked. Jiang Tunan was silent for a moment, and decisively left Siwen behind. "You run first. I go back to save someone." The Zerg certainly wouldn't give Jiang Tunan a chance. They had quickly tied up Xieji. This was the first time Xie had suffered such a great humiliation since he was born. He looked at Jiang Tunan with a dull face, and gradually became desperate. "Don't worry about me. Let me end my life here." Jiang Tunan looked back at the silent imperial army with a guilty conscience, and like a slippery loach, he once again entered the Zerg territory. The world seemed to have been paused. Everyone looked at Jiang Tunan like a gust of wind, instantly rolling up the Zerg in front of him, and then reached out to grab Xie, who was also about to be swept up by the wind. This time, there was no slip, and Jiang Tunan pulled Xie behind him steadily. Xie Xiao's voice also came. "Go! Crush these Zergs!" Jiang Tunan didn't have time to continue listening to their plans. The huge force pushed her down. She wanted to throw Xie up like a conditioned reflex, but she saw a group of Zergs looking at them, as if waiting for her next move. It was very strange here, as if there was a whirlpool pulling her whole body. But Jiang Tunan couldn't think of anyone else who could have such great energy to pull her except Chui. Since she couldn't send Xie back, she hugged Xie tightly. "Hold on. It should be over soon." Facts have proved that Jiang Tunan's guess was correct. The only person in this world who could grab her away was Chui. Seeing that Jiang Tunan was holding someone in his arms, Chu Yi's expression also cracked for a moment, until she saw the person's wet golden hair clearly. Then she showed an expression of understanding. Why are you so embarrassed? Jiang Tunan said speechlessly. Then I still have to thank my sister for her help. Chu Yi changed the subject with a guilty conscience. I called you here mainly because I thought about it, and felt that the problem with the tree spirit still needs to be solved. Jiang Tunan had time to look around and found that they were about to be taken into darkness before they could see the light again for a few minutes. There were only dots of white light around them. And when they saw them coming, they surrounded them enthusiastically. Jiang Tunan nodded casually. Okay. I just happened to bring a divine beast that can handle this matter. A huge killer whale appeared in front of everyone. Chu Yi found that it was Jingjing who was brought, and was also stunned. The black turtle didn't tell me that you still have this use. Chu Yi's ability is precognition, but she doesn't use it much. For creatures in her dimension, they have to follow the rules of each period. And naturally they don't know that Jingjing is not an ordinary animal. Jingjing rubbed Chu Yi's hand affectionately, opened his bloody mouth without hesitation, and began to swallow the fog in front of him. The effect is very significant. After a while, the sky they can see seems to have become brighter. Tada cheered for Jingjing in Jiang Tunan arms. Xieji barely recovered. Looking at this scene, he turned his head and looked at the black tree. Where is the tree spirit? Working as a laborer on the deserted planet. After all, this matter has a lot to do with him. And now he starts to atone for his sins. Chu Yi sat leisurely, grabbed a handful of Jiang Tunan hair and played with it, thinking, what's going on outside? Jiang Tunan pondered for a moment, and said uncertainly, the Zerg may lose a large number of combat power. As for the culprit, it should not be good. Setting up a very strong cage is certainly not to protect old Qi, but to torture him. Jiang Tunan had guessed long ago that someone would seek revenge on him. If he was killed at once, it would be too easy. What about being that old Qi here? Jiang Tunan suddenly thought of this important matter. Dead. Chu Yi tilted his head and pointed to a small grave not far away. Du Liang and I thought about it, and still felt that we should cut the grass and root it out. What a good way to cut the grass and root it out. Jiang Tunan looked at the grave, silent for a moment, and asked, aren't you afraid that he will crawl out of the soil? This is not his real body, but he made it up of fog, which will be scattered with a hit. If you have to say it, it is probably similar to a holographic projection. With the suppression of the tree spirit, not even a ghost is left. How could it crawl out? Chu Yi looked at the sky that was gradually getting brighter inside. It's finally over. Jiang Tunan nodded involuntarily. She never thought that she would be awakened in this way. Speaking of which, I have to thank Mr. Qi. Chu Yi stood up, caught a small white light, and sighed. If it weren't for him, you would have traveled so many worlds without any intention of awakening. And it would be quite lonely. Xieji also stood up and nodded. That's true. But fortunately everything is over. What's wrong with your tone of having finished your life? Chu Yi couldn't help but complain. The three of them quarreled and watched the sky gradually light up with a touch of orange. After a while, a red sun lit up, and Jingjing shouting came, after so many years. Jingjing, I finally had a full meal. Jingjing became a little bigger, and it was obvious that it was really full as it said. The tree spirit's body did not seem to have changed much. But everyone knew that this matter could not be done overnight. With Jingjing here, and according to its eating speed, it will soon be able to restore this place to its former appearance. After taking back Jingjing, Jiang Tunan and his two little tails lit incense for the white light here. I will let you resume your peaceful life soon. Jiang Tunan promised. The gray fog accumulated here for many years probably did not like them either. The white light gathered into a ball and floated everywhere. Jiang Tunan looked carefully and found that there was a small flower in front of each small grave. It was done by 30 and 33. Speaking of this, Chu Yi couldn't help laughing. I brought a few children here before, and old Qi was killed by Du Liang. They decided to plant a small flower as a companion for these sacrificed people. Children always have infinite childlike innocence and love. Jiang Tunan moved his fingers lightly, and a gentle breeze came from all directions, gently blowing the small flowers that looked fragile but tough. End. Chapter 110. This ancient cemetery is inside the planet, and it is difficult for ordinary people to explore. They walked to the door and were stopped by Mendez. Long time no see. Jiang Tunan. Mendez's eyes swept over the three people and smiled. Jiang Tunan didn't say anything. Looking at Mendez, and finally decided to express his ideas in a simple and easy-to-understand way. The vines flew out at a speed that was difficult to capture with the naked eye, and quickly wrapped around Mendez, before the smile on his face disappeared. He was tied up. The last person who accepted Long Chi-Chu's temptation was Lu Song, who has turned into a pile of dust. Jiang Tunin glanced at the sky and added, "Now you want to transform. It may be too late, because the last person who mastered this skill is dead." Everyone looked in the direction she looked at, and saw grand fireworks blooming above the sky. But there was no arrangement for fireworks and firecrackers in the Interstellar. "It's not fireworks. It's a self-destruction program," Jiang Tunin explained kindly. "This self-destruction program belongs to the monster that swallowed Xie. Jiang Tunin discovered this when he first started investigating. They were obviously prepared and didn't want any experimental products to fall into the hands of irrelevant people. This big guy is the four-legged beast that Jiang Tunin saw at the beginning, which was stuck on the planet and couldn't leave. It was unknown what Qi Lao did to it, and it became a container, constantly outputting dark matter to their things that were neither human nor insect. Since this thing was gone, Jiang Tunin couldn't help but guess that Qi Lao was probably not well. It's not that she thought too much. Qi Lao obviously didn't intend to survive. It's also possible that he knew in his heart that after doing so many things, it would be difficult for him to survive. Rather than accepting everyone's scorn, it's better to leave before that. As Jiang Tunin expected, Qi Lao finally blew himself up. After the billowing smoke dissipated, whether it was the attraction of blood relationship or Guanqi was very conspicuous in the middle. Qi Lao looked at his clothes that were not damaged at all and sighed deeply. It is said that the winners are the kings and the losers are the bandits. He lost because he was not as skilled as others. Jiang Tunin was more powerful than he thought. His abilities were treacherous and varied, and even his helpers were endless. He had a bold guess that Jiang Tunin might not be the same Jiang Tunin as before. If his guess was correct, then he would never be able to turn things around in this life. During the dozens of minutes of being roasted by the fire, even if the fire could not hurt him, he could feel the high temperature rising and the suffocating feeling of the thick smoke blocking his mouth and nose, which was not very comfortable. Old Qi raised his head slightly and suddenly understood the meaning of Jiang Tunin deleting him here, letting him watch his defeat and accept everyone's judgment. But not entirely, Old Qi thought, looking at his proud granddaughter not far away. Jiang Tunin probably wanted him to repent, or let Guanqi see his embarrassed appearance. Of course, Old Qi would not let Jiang Tunin get what he wanted. He thought about it, and remembered the fate of the person in the Botanical Research Institute. He is still going through the procedures. Because of several crimes, he will probably spend the rest of his life in prison, rather than waiting for the torment of the rest of his life. It is better to end his life at this time. Thinking this way, Old Qi could no longer stop thinking. He was not afraid of death. But for the first time, he was a little worried that his disgraced fate would have a bad impact on the children. So Old Qi could only take out his last trump card and try to see if the microbomb in his body that could destroy a planet could take away a wave of people who were closest to Jiang Tunin. This vine cage can only block all the damage from the outside. If Old Qi wants to self-destruct, it can only block the shock wave from rushing out as much as possible. Feeling the pain of his body being sucked away by energy in an instant, Old Qi took a last look at the gorgeous fireworks in the sky. The exclamations around him reached his ears, and Old Qi felt a little sorry. What a pity! Guanqi stood in the middle of the crowd. Lu Qi was worried that she would do something irrational and kept staring at her. Outside were Jinsong people, so they didn't have to worry about sudden attacks from others. The moment Qi Lao exploded, everyone on his side was like a clockwork robot, stopping their movements instantly and staring blankly at the cloud that dyed the sky red. Then, they surrendered obediently. When Jiang Tunin came with the car made of vines, Xie, who was pale, and Chui, who didn't intend to show up, sat in the back and exclaimed, "I really don't know whether I should praise them for being well trained." Seeing them coming, everyone breathed a sigh of relief. The first thing they did was to check Jiang Tunin's condition, and they found that she was lively and in good condition, so they were relieved. The same was true for Guanqi. She quickly looked away, and suddenly didn't know what attitude she should use to face these former partners. Emotionally, they were once comrades who fought side by side. But her grandfather had hurt her friends, and even used her to obtain information about her friends, which made Guanqi hard to accept. In silence, Guanqi walked alone to the blackened vine cage. trying to find the last thing left by her grandfather. Wang Yizhao wanted to reach out and pull her, but was stopped by Lu Qi, who gave her a look. It was Jin Song, who had been guarding here, who pulled Guanqi and handed her the cane that old Qi never left. Everything ended with the culprit's self-explosion. After returning to peace, they preliminarily drafted the responsible party. Although old Qi was gone, the Empire still chose to make all his actions public. The old man who was once admired by thousands of people eventually lost his integrity in his later years. After he left, he was unable to change the history of the Empire by his own strength as he wished. His family was not implicated. Guanqi's father died when Guanqi was very young. His mother took Guanqi to live alone outside, and only Guanqi often visited his grandfather's house. Their descendants are declining, and perhaps old Qi has considered the consequences of failure, so he harms other people's children. In this battle, apart from some injured people on old Qi's side, the most seriously injured person is Xie. The bone sword passed down by the Xie clan is not so easy to take, and coupled with the dilution of blood over the years, the simple wounds in the past are now considered to be 100 days of healing. He got sick leave again as he wished, and returned to the deserted planet to lie sick, fearing that everyone didn't know that he was a patient who needed care. As for the deceived culprit, Xu Ling, he was taken to the deserted planet for retransformation and learning to be a human being. The main body was guarded by Jing Jing and the whale team, under the matchmaking of Du Liang and Xie Xiao. The Empire and Chu Yi signed a ceasefire agreement, and the Federation had to compromise. The Zerg's lost mother is still being searched. Their high-level officials actually caused such a serious accident without the knowledge of the people. The Federation is busy investigating the people and animals transformed by old Qi, and has no time to continue to waste with the Zerg. No one knows how many experiments Qi Lao had done, and how many people and animals he had harmed. Now everyone in the Federation is in danger. The only good news is that with the union of the Tree Spirit and Jiang Tunan, the location of the Zerg Mother is easier to confirm. The Zerg Mothers were hidden by Qi Lao. They were found when they were clearing the remaining resentment. Among the 5 endangered planets, 2 had Zerg Mothers hidden, and 1 was even on the verge of hatching. If they hadn't gone in time, this Zerg Mother would have only 2 fates, either polluting the entire planet or dying because it could not hatch successfully. Chu Yi was furious and directly destroyed an uninhabited planet in the Federation. After seeing the gap between the Zerg and humans, those humans with ideas kept silent, fearing that Chu Yi would rush them next. Chu Yi is often a reasonable Zerg, and with the people Siwen has saved over the years, the Zerg's reputation has actually shown a slight sign of improvement over the years. After careful consideration, everyone decided not to announce the children hidden on the barren planet to prevent them from being watched by others. After Jiang Tunan awakened her true form by accident, these problems were no longer a problem for her, and she could easily maintain the children's human state. However, the damage left by old Qi was irreversible after all. These children had a much shorter lifespan than normal children, and the same was true for animals. Urshium's lighter function disappeared, and it was very sad for a while. Urxia, one of the quadruplets, blew herself up because of guilt. The 3 brothers were unwilling to return to their human form and decided to spend the rest of their lives as raccoons. However, because they were once accomplices of Lang Qichu, they were not allowed to leave the deserted planet except for being sent on public missions. The villa for the 4 brothers had been built, but only 3 people moved in the end. They chose a red panda from the mutant animals they rescued, decided to raise it as their own child, and gave it all their skills. Everything on the deserted planet returned to the past. After old Qi left, Du Liang successfully took over the burden of the Animal Research Institute, and Jiang Tunan also had a new internship identity. As for how she flashed to the deserted planet in the first place, everyone tacitly kept silent. The undamaged deserted planet was replanned because of the overflowing animals, trying to make the tourists who came to the deserted planet leave with satisfaction. Many viewers were waiting for the deserted planet live broadcast to be reopened, and also waiting for the deserted planet to be officially opened. Finally, on an evening with sunset clouds all over the sky, the deserted planet live broadcast suddenly started. This time, the first thing they saw was not any human, but the gray eyes of the leopard that were magnified several times, and a leopard roar. To everyone on the deserted planet, it sounded like the weak, pitiful and helpless plea for help from the leopard. Who will save me? Is this thing used like this? I didn't expect that our King Bao would also show weakness. Fu Fu was lying on a branch, with his big golden tail drooping in the air. Below was a beautiful white tiger, rolling to pull Fufu's tail. But unfortunately it never succeeded. Leopard saw Jiang Tunnen from a distance and ran over to ask for help. Nanananan. Come and save me! Jiang Tunnen looked closer and found that Leopard had somehow turned on the live broadcast. The screen quickly flashed with praises for Leopard. But Leopard was uneducated and couldn't understand it at all. They are all praising you for being cute. Jiang Tunnen rubbed Leopard's big head and chatted with the audience directly, and shared the progress of infrastructure construction on the deserted planet. Originally, everyone planned to share the news that the deserted planet would be open to the audience recently. Leopard Wave was also a mistake, but it showed everyone the most real and natural state on the deserted planet. Until Xieshi came. Jiang Tunnen said goodbye to the audience with a group of cubs and went off the air. Everyone on the deserted planet didn't know that it was because of Xieshi's unintentional half-face that the entire star network once again set off a heated discussion. Chapter 111. Before the official opening of the deserted planet, the live broadcast was started again, this time purely to introduce several ways to play in the deserted planet to the tourists who had already booked. Jiang Tunnen was not there, and the person in charge of the live broadcast was Su Qingwei, who came to guest star. For the people of the Empire, Su Qingwei is already a well-known Federation exchange student, and everyone is grateful for her contributions to the Empire and the Federation. In addition, Su Qingwei, as one of the few people who can understand animals, has broadcast live for the deserted planet several times. Her style is completely different from Jiang Tunnen, and the audience is very receptive to her. Su Qingwei often popularizes some plant knowledge to everyone, and also talks a lot about rescuing animals in the wild. The response in the live broadcast room is quite good. Nan is already on her way back. I'm going to introduce you to the route I personally recommend, because this route is more suitable for everyone to appreciate plants. Su Qingwei introduced. These plants are carefully selected by us, and they are more interactive. The camera zoomed out slightly, and everyone saw Fufu lying on a big tree, with a vine hooked on his tail. The small branches on the vine twitched, and when it touched it, Fufu's tail quickly hit it to the side. Someone on the barrage recognized this vine called Golden Vine, and said in surprise, I have seen this thing on the mutant star. It has barbs on its body. The reason why it is called Golden Vine is because it is golden in color, and often yellow vines enter, and white vines come out. So is this a vine weakened by the barren star? Curious Su Qingwei looked at the camera and explained to everyone, this is indeed the Golden Vine. In order to preserve the original flavor, it has even added a few points of power. She raised her hand to signal the audience that there was a layer of transparent glass blocking it. But the golden vine inside seemed to sense her provocation, and its attention was instantly diverted from Fufu, and the suction cups were tightly attached to the glass. The branches and leaves were obviously yellow, but the suction cups tightly pressed against the glass were green. Su Qingwei explained to everyone carefully, and suddenly paused, with a hint of smile in her voice. The camera pulled outward as she pointed, and the audience saw Jiang Tunnen at the other end, still wearing the uniform of the Imperial Central Academy, obviously rushing back in a hurry. Behind her followed a black lamb, with her school bag hanging on her body, with golden eyes, looking noble and docile. Let me see who is back. It's Xieshi. And Nan, who understands my family. I've been looking forward to it for 500 years. And I actually saw Xieshi again. It's really strange. Why does the sheep have the same name as that one? Am I the only one who thinks it's strange? What bad intentions can the sheep have? I now believe that there is no script for the desolate star. All the cubs came out to welcome Nan. The one in front is obviously not a die-hard fan. Xieshi has appeared several times before. There were sheepdogs in ancient times, and now there are sheep. Jiang Tunnen gave Su Qingwei a big hug first, then greeted everyone with a smile, and live-streamed with Su Qingwei. The two cooperated well, and the popularity of the live-streaming room was getting higher and higher. They even did not miss the specially open catering points, and communicated and introduced them to everyone conscientiously, striving to make every customer who came to the desolate star feel at home. When the desolate star was in trial operation, there were only 200 places available. On the one hand, it is for everyone's user experience, and on the other hand, it is to let the small animals adapt. There are many ticket scalpers on the Star Network who want to take advantage of the opportunity to make a fortune. Jiang Tunnen, who has experience in modern life, has already thought of a countermeasure and directly requires a reeling system to avoid this situation. Moreover, the Wild Star does not prevent people from taking photos and live broadcasting activities. Their glass has been specially treated. And even if there are equipment such as flash, there is no worry about hurting the animals. When the park was officially opened, the brave ones were all on the periphery. The beasts looked at humans curiously, and their furry bodies caused waves of exclamations. For the animals on the Wild Star, it is also a civilized monkey viewing. Foo foo. That biped seems to be taking a photo of you. The leopard raised his head and looked at Foo Foo on the tree trunk. They are closest to the entrance, and there are basically cats inside. The big cats with spiritual intelligence have a certain sense of territory, but they don't fight to the death. Foo Foo and Bao Bao grew up together, and the two cats have a good relationship. When they are not sleeping, they love to play together. Many viewers who watch the live broadcast of the deserted star like to watch the scene of them fighting and playing in the name of unity and love. Bao Bao. Bao Bao. Look at me! A girl's voice sounded in the crowd. And Bao Bao really responded. He looked over with his ears erect, his tail as long as his body swung, and he ran to the glass, tilted his head and looked around, as if looking for someone to call him. Just as he turned his head, there were screams of surprise from the crowd. Everyone began to praise Bao Bao for being smart and spiritual. Some people even took out a bright red banner from their bags with a few big words on it. Bao Bao. Fly bravely. Mom will always be with you. Jiang Tunin turned around and saw the conspicuous banner, and couldn't help covering her face. Siwen, who was familiar with human language, read it again and asked a soul-searching question. Leopard fly bravely? Are all you humans so exaggerated? Jiang Tunin said righteously, this is an exaggeration, mainly to express their love for leopard. You should learn more about our human culture, and not just look at the surface. Siwen tilted his head and glanced at her, without making any comments. Seeing that leopard, a kitten that can't take color photos, can be so popular. Foo Foo jumped down from the branch. His agile posture was not ordinary, just like a lion jumping through a ring in a circus. This is even more lively. Foo Foo's fan clubs are popping up like mushrooms after rain. If it weren't for the limited number of places, the Lion and Tiger Park would probably be blocked. After the fan club was established, a group of fans packed up and planned to leave with reluctance. Jiang Tunin found Huadian and couldn't help but go over and asked, aren't you a fan of Bao Bao? The girl saw Jiang Tunin and quickly took out a small banner from her bag and handed it to her. I am a fan of the group and I will not let go of any living creature on the deserted planet. Before Jiang Tunin could react, she took out a small package from her bag and stuffed it all into Jiang Tunin. I trouble Nan Nan to deliver these to them. Jiang Tunin was flattered for the first time to face the enthusiasm of fans. He thanked the girl repeatedly and took out a panda doll made in the image of a baby from his pocket and stuffed it into her. The idea of making cultural and creative products came from Jiang Tunin based on the cultural and creative products he had seen on Earth. The only problem with making cotton dolls was where the cotton came from. Su Qingwei brought a lot of seeds from the ancient blue planet from home, and there were really cotton seeds among them. With Jiang Tunin around, a lot of high-quality cotton was soon grown. The only downside is that it cannot be mass-produced yet. However, in the interstellar era, everyone can rely on high technology to keep warm, and there is no need to use cotton. The first batch of plants grown by Jiang Tunin were all used to make dolls of various animals to test whether there is a market. At the exit of the Wild Star Zoo, they set up a cultural and creative store so that people who come to play can return with satisfaction. This news was also released during the live broadcast of Wild Star. Many people were questioning and pessimistic, thinking that Wild Star was using means to make money. Because Wild Star promised that there would be no entrance fee to enter the park, and it would be free to visit. The only restriction is that the number of places that can be applied for to enter the park is limited every day, and only reservations can be made in advance on the Star Network. The various equipment that benefits animals on Wild Star alone is a huge sum of money. Even if Jiang Tunin has recovered his ability, he can only control the climate on Wild Star and the growth of various plants, how to separate humans and animals, and even to monitor the condition of each animal, still depends on the various facilities sent by Du Chen. There is a long way to go in popularizing animals and plants. Du Liang fully agrees with Jiang Tunin's approach. In addition, she is now the director of the Animal Research Institute, with great authority to mobilize. With Du Chen as her backing, she can do whatever she wants. The wild star is in the limelight, and several forces behind it are pushing the development of the wild star. This planet, which has been silent for decades, finally appears in front of everyone with a brand new look. Nanan. The things here are sold out. Professor Zhao sent a message to Jiang Tunan in his busy schedule, and his words were full of happiness. Interstellar people have never seen cotton dolls, which feels strange. They can't touch real animals, so it's great to pinch them like this. So the cotton dolls that Jiang Tunan advocated to make sold well, which was expected by everyone. Many people who bought the things put them on the Star Network to share, which caused heated discussions again. What are they doing on the Wasteland Star? Cotton dolls? I wonder what they are. The word cotton sounds so familiar. The Wasteland Star knows hunger marketing. Such a small amount of things can attract everyone to scramble. I don't believe it's not a marketing trick. You really don't say the previous one. There are only so many things on the Wasteland Star, and they will be gone after they are sold out. This kind of thing is also a rare species. It feels good to buy it home as a collection. This panda is quite lifelike. Can any sisters help buy it for me? The first batch of cotton was limited in quantity, and the first time this program was set up, the factory recommended by Duchin was not fast. So this situation of supply exceeding demand occurred. Jiang Tunan's eyes lit up and saw a new business opportunity. The Wasteland Star is a large place. Even if you stay there for a day, you are just having fun on a route they recommended. When the last ray of light disappeared on the horizon, everyone on the Wasteland Star finally breathed a sigh of relief. Who understands? My family? I never dared to imagine the life I'm living now. Really? I never thought that there would be such a day on our desolate planet, with so many tourists coming to support us. Pain and happiness. Our robots are almost running out. Even the active cubs gather to watch the human meeting and express their opinions from time to time. I, Bao Bao, have given too much to this family. I am. Look at the photos your fans gave you. None of them are in color. Fu Fu and Bao Bao, the two energetic cat kings, fought again, and a group of cubs around them made way for them to compete for the 185th time. The feedback on the Star Network also came quickly, except for some parents with children who said that the place was too big. The rest of the young people were very satisfied with the desolate planet and quickly asked about the opening reservations of the desolate planet in the future. For a time, the desolate planet was the most popular. Chapter 112. On the day Jiang Tunan graduated, everyone on the deserted planet attended the graduation ceremony together, which was a team-building activity for families. Wan Yishao accompanied them and stood aside to watch the huge team. He couldn't help but want to drag his cousin who came to attend his graduation ceremony, but found that the person standing next to him had disappeared. Looking closely again, the man appeared next to Jiang Tunan, his golden eyes blocked by sunglasses. Avoiding the risk of being recognized, Tung Kai patted Wan Yishao on the shoulder and comforted him. Humans are like this. If they are not firm in their positions, they will always be more concerned with women than with sisters. Why not let your sister take you out to play? In the crowded playground? It took almost a blink of an eye for a group of conspicuous people to disappear in the crowd. Wan Yishao had no choice but to follow Tung Kai and follow the large group of people on the deserted planet, watching many students and parents rush over to give Jiang Tunan things or take photos with him. Jiang Tunan refused to accept anything and stood there to accompany them for photos, turning himself into a tourist attraction. It was not until Chu Yi and Si-Wen arrived late that Jiang Tunan was rescued from the crowd. The group continued to visit the school under the leadership of Jiang Tunan. The few trees planted by Jiang Tunan had grown into a dense forest. After the college league, Jiang Tunan, the star player, stood out. The leaders finally remembered the years of grievances between the Botanical College and the Zoological College, and built a protective wall during the holiday. The protective wall was not conspicuous in the shadowy green, but it was very powerful in blocking those mutant animals. At least no plants in the Botanical College suffered as before. In fact, Jiang Tunan did not spend much time in school during the years she went to school. Compared with the knowledge in the textbooks, she had too many things to do. The plant illustrations compiled with Su Qingwei have been published in 2 volumes, and are regarded as a treasure by students in the Department of Botany. However, there are still too many plants in the Interstellar that they have not yet recognized, and the road to scientific research is still long. The research on mutant animals was not delayed at all, whether on the barren planet or on the ordinary planet. She wanted to split her time into 8 parts. Only in school could she temporarily escape the adult world. When Jiang Tunin graduated with a sack of her award-winning papers and projects, the school invited her to stay. After thinking it over again and again, Jiang Tunin agreed to the school's invitation and promised to come back for a class every week. As a plant that absorbs the essence of heaven and earth, Jiang Tunin feels that she has an obligation to turn the interstellar space into the appearance of the earth. At least not like it is now bare, relying entirely on projection for greening. The transformation of the barren planet is basically completed, and the plant department of the Imperial Central College has become a famous attraction in the school. People from other departments like to visit it very much. Jiang Tunin's next plan is to make the Animal Research Institute where she joined the school look like the barren planet, so that the mutant animals living here can also spend their lives comfortably. Since Professor Zhao appeared in everyone's vision, the Plant Research Institute cried and begged him to re-employ him, but was rejected. But Professor Zhao accepted the invitation of the Imperial Central College and continued to study his favorite plants in a different identity. Another reason is that after several years of treatment, 766 and 777 can go to school. The affiliated primary school of the Imperial Central College is very strong. It is better to raise a baby than to raise a chicken. Professor Zhao chose to bend over backwards for the sake of the two children's schooling. Jiang Tunin looked back at Teng Kai and suddenly said, "Are all the cubs in the base locked up?" Hearing that Jiang Tunin had graduated, the illiterate babies, who had never been to school, had to come and join in the fun. The large size of beasts such as leopard and Fu alone can scare many tourists. If they appear collectively on Pingxing, Guangxing may have to deal with various complaints in the next year. Teng Kai was stunned by Jiang Tunin's question and subconsciously looked at Teng Nan. Teng Nan said coldly, "Teng Kai did forget. But I remember. Fu and Bao were sent to hunt with the younger ones. The cubs were busy repairing the bamboo that was broken because of their fight. Lang Chu's family was surrounded by Arctic hares, and they are probably taking care of the cubs now." Jiang Tunin was relieved and continued to mutter, "I will go on a business trip to M28 next week. I originally agreed to accompany the cubs to go hunting, and there is a high probability that I will stand them up again." On the remote M28 planet, Chu-Yi felt the presence of animals, and it was the clouded leopard that she and Jiang Tunin tracked and observed together on Earth. It's a pity that Chu-Yi was not well prepared. Even if she is the god of the Zerg, she has to follow the procedures in front of the animals. Jiang Tunin heard this, and couldn't wait to track the clouded leopard together. As for why it was set for next week, it was mainly because the deserted planet was going to celebrate the anniversary of the peaceful coexistence and diplomatic relations between the Empire and the Zerg. The conference was held on the deserted planet, and Jiang Tunin naturally had to go back to help. As the leader of the Zerg, Chu-Yi had to appear in this kind of scene and exchange false greetings with the old emperor of the empire before he could run away. When they appeared on M28, they were followed by a group of little tails. Fu and Bao insisted on coming with them, saying that they wanted to meet new friends. Xieji was on vacation recently and insisted that he wanted to join in the fun. Siwen said that it was too hard to deal with humans, so he continued to get along with animals to refresh his eyes. In this way, when they set foot on the land of M28, many small animals that were secretly spying on them ran to tell each other and hid. M28 is like a primitive planet with very few mutant plants on it. With Jiang Tunin, these mutant plants are not to be feared. Moreover, there is no sense of the existence of any mutant animals here, and the safety factor is very high. But it is this climate that is somewhat similar to the tropical rainforest that is a bit difficult for interstellar people. But Jiang Tunin and his friends are not ordinary people, and they adapt well to it. Just like a group of elementary school students on a picnic. "Nan, I caught a crab. Shall we have barbecue tonight?" Siwen shouted happily. Jiang Tunin looked closely, and saw that the man was holding a hermit crab that was not as thick as his fingertips. "It's not that I can't eat it. It's crunchy when I take a bite." Jiang Tunin couldn't help laughing and said, "I'm just worried that a crab, might disappear in the carbon." Siwen made a face at Jiang Tunin, put the hermit crab back, and muttered, "I must catch a big crab today to prove myself." Jiang Tunin pointed out several locations without thinking, and before Siwen could make a move, Xieji came back. He was holding a small bucket in his hand, and he considerately filled it with some water. Several big and fat crabs were fighting each other with their claws, as if they were demonstrating to Siwen. "Is this enough for us to eat?" Xieji turned a deaf ear to Siwen's sneer and handed the bucket to Jiang Tunin. Chu-Yi grabbed Siwen's collar. looked at the tacit and intimate atmosphere between the two, and said speechlessly, "Why do you have to get close to others? Have you never been in love?" "Siwen, I really haven't been in love. Why don't you introduce me to someone?" "And in love? They are in love? You told me that Xiao Shuling is in love with Jiang Tunan more than Xie is in love with Jiang Tunan." Chui choked and waved his hand at Siwen, who couldn't read the atmosphere. "Fortunately, you are an asexual insect. Otherwise you will never find a partner in this life. Humans often say that they can eat anything but the bitterness of love. Do I need to teach you this truth?" Siwen quickly took the right to speak and showed off in front of Chui. Chui has seen stupid people, but not such a stupid one. She rolled her eyes and sneered, "You're right. I'm ignorant. Jiang Tunan didn't mean to fall in love with Xie. They have been together for many years, and feelings can't be measured by time. The tacit understanding between the two was not formed overnight. So Jiang Tunan just pretended not to see the eyes of thousands of people. Unfortunately, the tacit understanding failed at this time, and she felt Xie gaze. Even if she had never eaten pork, she had seen pigs run. Jiang Tunan looked up at Xie, took the crab he washed clean, and said calmly, "If you have anything to say, just say it. Don't give me the set of reluctant to accept. See, this is the benchmark of the domineering CEO's lines." Chui pulled Siwen to sit on a small stool and eat melon seeds as background music, and occasionally comment. Xie, who originally had something to say, suddenly felt that he had nothing to say. His eyes moved and his eyes fell on the bushes. He quickly held down Jiang Tunan and said proudly, "I found it first this time." The telescopic fishing rod in his hand was suddenly thrown out, and a net was hung in front, just catching the animal hiding in the jungle. "You still want a girlfriend? The Xie tribe really reproduces asexually." Chui rolled his eyes and made a sharp comment. Siwen was confused. Did Xie also reproduce asexually? But he was not sure. Chui often made such inexplicable remarks. Only Jiang Tunan could understand, and was willing to stop her. Siwen just thought Chui was crazy again. What was caught was a clouded leopard, which was completely effortless. Jiang Tunan covered the clouded leopard and started to check the status of the clouded leopard without paying attention to Chui. M28 star was more powerful than she thought. This clouded leopard was fat and strong. Obviously, here, both food and exercise were very up to standard. Without the invasion of mutant animals, the habitats of these ordinary animals are protected. They live freely here, and they will be happier if they are not disturbed by these uninvited guests. Wow, this cat is so small. Bao Bao walked around the cage and expressed his feelings. "You are small. Your whole family is small. This clouded leopard has a bad temper." He walked around the cage and said angrily to Bao Bao. Bao Bao didn't care, shook his tail, and said very tolerantly, "I won't argue with you. Everyone has the responsibility to love and care for kittens." This remark hit the clouded leopard's sore spot even more. As one of the wild cats, the clouded leopard is small in size and has a long tail. Compared with beasts like leopard and Fu, it is indeed no different from a kitten. Jiang Tunan opened the cage and let it go. But the clouded leopard stayed. "I won't leave. I want to see what tricks these two big fools have. They dare to mock me." The humans and Zerg watching on had no idea that things would go in a direction they had never considered. In desperation, everyone could only choose to take the clouded leopard with them temporarily. M28 is not a big planet, and having a clouded leopard as a guide is much more convenient for them. They visited all the animals living on M28, and even found the parents of the cub by accident. The giant pandas were very moved when they saw Xie, and they all thanked him and told Jiang Tunan about the danger at that time. The interstellar living environment is harsh. Even on M28, everyone is always worried about the sudden appearance of Zerg or mutant animals. As long as the cubs are born, they will be sent out, insisting that eggs should not be put in one basket. The panda tribe was the first to receive the signal sent by Xie. In addition, they had no better place to arrange the cubs. So they simply listened to him, and put the cubs on the mutant planet full of dangers. Later, the couple also went to the deserted planet to secretly see the cubs. Seeing it grow up carefree, they all breathed a sigh of relief. Invited by Jiang Tunan and his group, they simply agreed to go to the deserted planet. M28 is a small planet, and this matter is considered a big news that can be published in the Forest Morning News. Many animals, who were separated from their families, decided to go to the deserted planet to take a look. The clouded leopard is no exception. It has no relatives. It just quarrels with the leopard to make trouble for it. The deserted planet has become lively again. Many small animals have found their relatives. Some choose to return to M28 with their relatives. And some choose to stay on the deserted planet. The main feature is to do whatever they want. Seeing the bustling deserted planet every day, Jiang Tunan breathed a sigh of relief. No one would remember their original agreement. Right? Until Jiang Tunan went to the Animal Research Institute to report, and met Xieji, who had transformed into her assistant.